All right. I guess we'll start it here. Going to have to go away from my usual show commentator intro. First of what we're calling the Inside Dirt long forms. And this is pretty much the direction of the podcast from here on out that you would have heard in the intro. But Dean Ferris, mate. Sunshine Coast's own. Welcome to the Inside Dirt studio, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. I feel like this podcast's been a long time coming, so yeah, happy to be here, man.
It has, I think, and I was talking about, well, not talking in my head, I was talking to myself about it. Sounds strange. Over the years, we've always caught up on different podcasts. Like when you came back from the States, we did one, and I think maybe even when you came back to racing after your back injury, I think we did one.
Yeah, we did actually.
Yeah, because obviously you were real tight with Kev Williams and Recoverate, and we were working with those guys as, you know.
We did one at the start of 23 as it's come back again as a privateer.
That's right, we did do that, yeah. Yeah, you've always been really good like that, Dean, as far as being cool to just reach out to, which I can't say is the same for everybody. As far as riders go, it ebbs and flows. Obviously, guys don't want to talk at times when they're having a bad year or a bad season or whatever. But, yeah, man, Dean Ferris, storied career, international. I was going through the RacerX vault this morning looking at everything you did over the years, and we'll get into all that. But I guess first and foremost, because of the way last year went to a degree, it's been very quiet, and there's been sort of no formal announcement. There's been social posts and such, but I guess where are you at in life right now?
Yeah, it's funny you say, like, it's been really quiet. It's probably what I wanted, to be honest. I needed some time. Didn't really want anyone to reach out to me, and no one actually did. So, yeah, what happened last year, I got hurt in May. It was like round 4 of the Nationals, and pretty much that was my season done. So, yeah, I just went and travelled with the family. We went to Bali for a month. Did a bit of travel around Queensland, a bit around Australia. We were living out of a van last year, and we set up shop here back on Sunny Coast. So we did live here for a year in 23. Felt like this is where we wanted to pull up stumps. So back in October, we got a house here, Sunny Coast, and yeah, just been doing the family thing, man, since then. So, but yeah, like I'm kind of unofficially not racing anymore. I don't want to say retirement because I've done that so many times, but like,
yeah, that's a sticky commitment.
Yeah, sticky commitment. Yeah. You never know with me. Like honestly, I'd like to keep riding, and I might even do some, one-off races. So it's not like I'm gone forever, but I did need like 6 months to be like, okay, cool, to get over it. Honestly, it's something I've been doing for like 20 years, and I wanted to spend more time with my family. That is just such a big commitment. Going racing every year, it's like daylight till dark if you want to do it at the highest level. At least it was for me. And yeah, I just didn't really want to commit to that anymore as much as I loved it. So like stepping away, it has been tricky, just mentally, just a weird feeling, you know what I mean? Like kind of like your sense of purpose. You don't really know what to do. I can't even explain it, honestly. I feel like Rhino talks about it a little bit, like getting people into motocross and then getting them out of it. It's definitely a challenge.
Well, they say 2 lives, right? I think he says 2 lives as a racer, which I can totally relate to. I think for yourself, right, if I look at the career, like you obviously quote unquote retired at the end of 22, but pretty much came back after a few months with that announcement. I think in the COVID years and when you had your injury with your back, you were still coaching, and you had I forget what your program was called now.
Motocross Masterclass.
Motocross Masterclass. So it was like, even those COVID years when no one was racing, you were still
I was
involved,
active.
right?
Yeah, so
active because there was no racing, so everyone was the same. But yeah, I can imagine. How old are you now?
I'm 34.
34, right? So, the best part of 27 years, whenever you started riding, I'm not sure how old you were, but we all started racing around 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah,
so.
I started a little later. I was 10 and just did club days till I was like 15. So
I want to get to that because you don't have a typical like ascension journey, which is something I really want to talk about. But yeah, even if you said you started racing at 10, man, you're 34. So what's that? 24 years.
Yeah.
You've, I'm sure you've had some odd jobs here and there, but it's been your career.
Yeah. Honestly, that's all I've thought about since the day that I did my first race. I just thought about motocross. So yeah, it's been a long time, definitely just thinking about that. So,
and a lot of guys a lot of guys don't fare well with it, especially, I hate to say, Australian riders. I've noticed a big problem with that, where I think the issue here is, you may be somewhat of an exception. You would have made decent money when you were winning, the years you were winning and having, pretty much perfect seasons and such, but it's still not life-altering money where you're going to retire and just sail off into the sunset in your mid-30s. And I feel that a lot of Aussie guys that, they're making a couple $100,000 a year or whatever it is, and they're top 5 MX1 guys, podium guys, and then 2 years later they're laying concrete because they struggled to see anything else outside of the sport. It's not me talking shit on anybody. It's the reality of the economy within the sport in Australia. There's only so much money you can make. But I can imagine, like, you've got Renee, you guys have got your direction that I want to talk about with what you're doing, post-career, which is really cool. But you can see where some guys just kind of go off the deep end with it, right? Because they've lost their identity, they've lost their career, their income, and they're maybe not cut out to be a coach or be in the sport, in the industry. What do they do?
Yeah, look, I've seen a lot of people, in my time retire. The big thing I've seen that I noticed when I was like 20, 21, like guys that made a lot of money just had nothing in the end. Like I just seen them piss it up the wall. So at least I knew, I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy. So I was pretty clever. Like I put away a nest egg. Like you said, it's not enough to just sail off into the sunset, but enough to feel like a sense of security. So that was okay. I looked at all sorts of investments, things to do. So yeah, I did notice that. But yeah, just the feeling in stepping away was different to what I thought. I remember thinking when I was in my heyday in like 2017 or that, I'll be like, oh man, I only got a few more years of this and then I'll be so happy to just hang up the boots and, I don't know, put the kids on the school bus and just hang out at home. But in reality, like for someone, like I would say I'm kind of aware of all these things, but still like your identity is attached to that athlete and just that get up, get after your thing. You've got drive to do something. You've had this purpose for so long. And then when you don't have that or you choose to step away, you're like, man, like, oh, like I can conceptualize that it's all good. Like I've got everything I ever wanted. Like got a family, a wife. We all adore each other. And then, I've had a good career and I'm healthy and all those things. But then just to not go and get that massive rush of like a gate drop and winning a moto is something else.
I had it recently where my partner, or my fiance, should I say, she's big into holistic health. She actually owns a healing and wellness center here in Maroochydore, and got hooked up with one of her practitioners, which is like a holistic naturopath, and I had a full DNA blood work done and everything. But it's relevant, right? Like, I was talking about my stress levels and running the business, and then she's like, well, tell me about your life before now. What did you do before now? And I was like, well, race motocross, did freestyle motocross. Then in Australia, I ran race teams, coaching schools, had a gym, was a PT, all this life journey stuff, right? And she's like, you realize, like, telling me from 5 years old until about 5 years ago when you decided to go into an office and step away from all that your body just ran off of processed adrenaline and that sort of thing. And she's like, if your body can't get it the way it's used to it, it can't burn, like that's still in your system. So you can't burn it. She's like, do you work out? I'm like, oh, I want to, but I don't have the time. I got kids, I got a business. It's not a priority anymore. And she's like, essentially, I'm really dumbing it down here. But she's like, if you don't find a way to process what's in your body naturally, because your body has literally
find something
grown
external
up,
to do that.
You'll find stress and caffeine and vices to give you that buzz. Well, I'm not talking about like drugs, but like, whatever. It's and I've noticed that with myself, and same as athletes. That's why a lot of guys probably end up struggling. And what you're saying is the identity side and even how your body's conditioned. Talking about your body, man, you just had some big surgeries, hey?
Oh, yeah. So recently, you might have seen on my socials.
Can I see the Miles bar on your elbow?
Yeah. So,
oh, man, show that to the camera right there. Yeah, that is...
Yeah, so that one broke it 16 years ago at a sunny state. Pretty much just smashed my ulna to bits. Had to get a plate all the way from halfway down my ulna all the way like it wrapped around the back of my elbow. So it was like this big tire lever.
And that was in there the whole career?
It was in there since 2009 I did that.
Wow.
Early years, struggled with it. Definitely the sad thing was in that surgery, the surgeon actually kinked my nerve.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Because I had to move my ulnar nerve to operate. And my nerve degenerated, died, essentially. So then my ulnar nerve, which is half your ring finger and your little finger, had no sensation, no control, no strength. For like a year and a half, those two fingers were just flapping in the wind. So I was trying to hang on just with my index and middle finger and used it. So it was pretty rough getting back from that injury. But then once I got the feeling back in my hand, it's never the same. It's still not the same today. It's never the same. But I wasn't quite. I've never been as strong in my left hand. But yeah, then I struggled. Just my arm was so stiff. Like it took me years and years to get over that injury.
Well, it's why I messaged you on Instagram the other day, because have you ever seen my elbow?
Yeah, we were comparing battle scars.
Yeah, man. It's so you did the ulnar, I did the radial head. I put the radial head out the top of my it wasn't compounded, but it was like flapping over there.
Yep.
And we were in Holland because I grew up in Europe. So I did this at a race when I was a kid in Europe, and no English speaking doctors. We thought they plated it. Anyway, they didn't. I don't know what they did to this day.
So there's no plate, no metal in it. So they opened it up and...
I don't know whether they I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what they did. And then, anyway, we went back to the NHS system in the UK. And anyway, short story long, basically I've got a fused, my radial is fused on one side. So can you turn your wrist?
Yeah, I actually can.
You can, yeah.
Almost full mobility, but that was what I struggled with for a long time. It's just like my tendons and stuff just couldn't adapt to that plate being in there for a while. But in the end, it wasn't too bad. I actually just got it out because aesthetically it looks shocking. Like I had this really pointy elbow.
You still got a little bit of it, hey? The elbow's the worst for the calcium buildup, though.
Yeah. Yep. And then also for the last 16 years, I haven't been able to sit my arm on the bench comfortably. Yeah. So I knew once I'm done, I'm getting that thing out. So I called Steve Andrews. I'm like, well, I want this thing out. He goes, yeah, no problem. Come in. He goes, most people want that plate out for the same reason.
Yeah, it's wild. I kind of wish I had hardware in it. So anatomically I could have, I can't rotate my wrist. I can't bend. I can't straight. Like it's been, and I understand completely because I've got no cartilage since I was a kid. So the bursts and the pain I get, and I broke this wrist, this scaphoid, these fingers, this, same as all of us. So it's like, yeah.
So your left arm's like taking a beating then?
I did it before I was even a teenager. So my whole career, it was pretty much the catalyst of if I was going to fall, it seemed that I went that way.
Right.
Anyway, that's normally it though, right? If you don't strengthen an injury, it becomes the weak point for, your body's performance.
Yeah, sure. So on top of that, I got
on the back, right?
Yeah, I got the rods and screws out of my back just less than 2 weeks ago. So still recovering from that.
That's gnarly, less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, actually, initially, better than getting the elbow, like the plate out of my elbow.
Really?
Yeah. So I sat up in recovery. I walked out that evening from back surgery, which is pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
But the surgeon said, he goes, it's not as gnarly as you think. He goes, so in your T-spine where I had the injury, he goes, not that much muscle I need to cut through. It's just flesh. Pretty much take it out, zip your back up, you'll be fine.
So was it T5,
It was like T4 to T7.
Because it was really touch and go when you did that, wasn't it? As far as, I remember getting the phone call from Kev Williams again, because that was back when you were doing the race line recovery rate KTM. I can't remember, what year was that?
2020.
Okay, so I wasn't in Queensland yet.
Yep.
But I was still working very closely with Kevin and all his ventures. And once it was public, he was like, it was bad. We didn't have details, but he's like, it wasn't good.
Yeah, it was serious, and I'm sure I dodged the bullet, honestly. So they didn't send me to the spinal clinic, where you do rehab, because I still had sensation in my legs and all of that.
Did it go numb at all when you crashed?
Yeah, not my legs. No, I just had some numbness across my chest, a fair bit on my back, but we didn't know that at the time because I was laid out like a pancake on the track.
Were you out cold as well?
Initially, yes. So I come to anyway, it was pretty brutal. But yes, they and they got me to ICU via the chopper to Sunshine Coast. Spent a few days there trying to recover to get to the point where they could get me to surgery because I was just so beat up that I couldn't. Mainly because of the punctured lung, I think. Like,
yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure like the surgeons and the anaesthetists, so they need you to be able to breathe properly and not have an issue while you're under anaesthetic.
Well, they can't take that risk of there being like lung pressure problems. And
so I was there, beat up for a while, got to Brisbane. They sliced and diced me and got me done there in Brisbane at the Royal Brisbane.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so recently had all that stuff out. I didn't even know it was an option. It was actually Billy McKenzie. He recently got some hardware out of his back probably 3 or 4 months ago. He goes, man, I feel amazing. Like, it was just, I didn't like it. It was kind of in the way. So have you looked into it? So me and Billy were teammates in 2011. That's how we know each other,
I was going to say the connection, it was either going to be here or MXGP, right? So,
no, it was from here. That's how we know each other. And we've stayed in contact all of these years. Anyway, I started looking into it because it's the biggest injury I've had, but I didn't know anything about it. I went through the public system. That's what they advised. Like, you'll be fine. This is what they do all day. But I didn't really get a consultation with the surgeon at all. Never seen his face. This is when COVID was happening. The borders were closed. I had to go home to New South Wales. I was stuck there doing phone consultations afterwards. So anyway, I booked in with a specialist and was like, mate, what can't I do? You know, after he'd done an MRI and scans, he's like, mate, if you want it out, we can get it out. He goes, I'm not guaranteeing it's going to help you. It probably won't. But he goes, that would be the first step.
Yeah.
Because I've had some discomfort since I've had it. It's never felt the same. I've got this I had this constant ache.
Well, your body's not designed to have aluminium and titanium
and
rods in it, right?
And look, I'm not fully expecting it's going to help because I did some damage there, and it might be just the damage I did to my spine. But taking it out is the first step.
Yeah.
That doesn't help. They can actually help me and do scans and pinpoint where the pain is coming from. So,
have you got a lot of degeneration in like the vertebra or anything like that?
No, the vertebrae actually look really good. That was the cool thing about doing this appointment. He's like, man, your discs actually look really good. Everything's healed. He did say like all your broken ribs that you had, because I broke 10 ribs when I did this injury.
Right.
He goes, where they join onto the spine, if you can imagine, they kind of float. He goes, they're pretty messed up, mashed together looking. He goes, it's probably where your pain's coming from. But he goes, hey man, if you get this stuff out, we can help you in the future.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it.
There's a lot you can do with chiropractic and different things too, right? Like, I actually went to the chiropractor the other day because I had some rib problems, and he's like, when's the last time you came to the chiropractor? I was like, over 10 years. Probably since I had my gym and training program, I stopped. And so he sent me to Maroochydore, got full x-ray of my spine. Probably would have been the same for you, right? And the comeback is like, Jesus, what have you done in your life? And he's like, normal people have this many, I don't know if there was a word he used, it was like contusions or something on the spine and the vertebra. And yeah, he's like, you've got this much. And yeah, it was interesting. I'd never broken, but like, I'm sure officially I'd done ribs, but I'd never done back.
Yep.
But just looking at the x-ray, and he was like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. We need to realign this, do this. And I was like, I had it pretty good. Like, imagine people like yourself that had full on back and neck injuries, you know?
Yeah. Honestly, I haven't been to the chiropractor maybe ever. I don't think. So I always went to an osteo.
Yeah.
Met a good osteopath at Gold Coast, actually. And I went there like religiously for 2 weeks, like every second week when I was, when I could. It was like in the years that I was racing. It's just like maintenance on the body. Like even if things were good, like there's something, just wear and tear of riding motocross. But I also went to that specific guy because it was just like a psychology lesson in the same time. For years, I didn't even know why. I kept this guy close to me. Call him a friend now. His name's Adam Thomas. And for years, I didn't know why, because I'm very big on listening to people that have got results that you've got or you'd trade places with. And I'd trade places with him. He's a very smart guy. Was looking after my body. But, it's just in recent years, I learnt that he's a 2-time world champion in close combat martial arts.
Yeah, right.
He was just too modest to tell me the whole time.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I found someone that was looking after my body and then also helped me with my mindset as well.
Well, you've had that kind of core group, right? Like I didn't know you had the osteo side and I guess somewhat mental, but you had Guy Andrews as your physical trainer for the longest time from memory. That was kind of your deal. Like you had a core crew and you kept to that crew like most of your career, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you you would recognize the face. He was always there on like championship day or like the pivotal day. Adam was there, Guy was there. It was like Renee, me. You know, it was a very, very tight knit group. And I kept them close. Like we're good friends, and they were always there, willing to help. You know, where they could. But yes, that was kind of the reason as well. Like reason I should say, we just ended up becoming friends. I kind of like a part of me went searching for them, and then they just showed up in my life. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah,
I think you look at the most successful, right? Like Carmichael was renowned for it. I think a lot of guys that are successful, they have the people. You know, I was talking to a writer and a family on the way in, and just talking business, but I was like, you're going to have so many people in your ear this year, and you got to do what's right for the kid and what's right for you guys, and kind of fuck everybody else to a degree, because you know how the industry is. It's business. You got the teams, the sponsors, they all want, and I'm guilty of it. We do PR, we do content, media, so everything needs to look and sound a certain way. But a lot of the time, what's good for the team isn't always what's good for the rider, vice versa. You got a lot of separate entities, stakeholders, whatever you want to call it. But it seemed like for yourself, especially in the years where you were super successful, like, you know, I obviously was doing TV and whatever I was doing, but I would always see you with the same people, and that shone through to me.
Yeah, I think everyone on their journey goes through the same thing in any industry. If you're on your way up, it is really hard to decipher or sift through people who can help you and genuinely have your interest or, you know, at heart, because there's just so many angles to come at, you know what I mean? And especially, I don't know, it's probably the same in every industry, but I found it really difficult to work out who and what to do, and you know what I mean? And sometimes you go years down the track and you just realize like what had just happened like in years prior. So when I found my crew, I was pretty set. I'm like, I know these guys well. We know each other. You know, they're here to help and not just give me the feel goods. You know what I mean? They're not trying to convince me or sound convincing. It was actually just based on like true deep friendships and
wanting your best interests to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the group was really small. And that was kind of I guess unintentional. I subconsciously wanted that, but I never realized until, you know, recent years that I fully created that, and that's actually really what I wanted. Yeah. So yeah, it's cool reminiscing on some of these moments and things that I created within my own little bubble. Yeah.
No, it was cool, like I said, and it was just kind of renowned for that. Like, because essentially for me, I didn't know you, like my time prior to Australia, obviously I didn't know most people in Australia. Like I'd heard of you, I'd heard of a lot of the fast guys over here, but.
Like what year did you come out?
So my story's random, but I lived here as a kid in like the year 2000. Mm-hmm. My family moved over here. So I lived in Victoria for a year and I was like 12. And my parents divorced and we went back to the UK. And then I was in the UK until I was like 18, 19. I went to the States for a couple of years. So I was running freestyle at that point. I got done racing in England and then the freestyle thing kind of ran its course. Mm-hmm. And my mum was living over here. And I was like, well, I was 21. It was 2009, started 2009. Yep. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to go back to England. And I was like, fuck.
Out to Australia,
I still had an Australian visa from when I was a kid. And it's the short story long. But I was like, I'm just going to give it a chance. Like, if I don't like it, I'll figure something else out. And so I came here in 2009. But then I didn't ride because I didn't know anybody. You know, that was kind of before like there was Facebook but like
and if you weren't actually following the nationals and going to the race and being a part of the media or the paddock, I guess you didn't know, right?
I didn't know anybody. Like I knew like Bilko and Sinks and stuff because like Bilko had came and done some races in the UK when I was a kid, and he stayed with us. But like those guys were living in America. Like there was no one in Oz that I knew, and then especially with racing, and I think it was that transition of time where it was like the world was still a smaller place.
Yeah.
You know, socials and internet hadn't quite busted everything.
So by the time socials come around, I guess I was gone. I was in Europe, and then you come on the scene.
That's what I was going to say. So I didn't really come on the pro scene until like I did some pro racing in like 12 and 13.
Yep.
And you were gone.
Yep.
So I would have raced you, but you were in. Well, I probably wouldn't have raced you, but we'd have been in the same race. Let's get that one clear.
Yep. And so I come back and did the 16 championship, but I believe you're already running a team.
No, so 16. So I came on the scene in 14. That's when I started doing TV.
Yep.
So I did 14, 15, and then you came back in 16. So I was quite established and doing TV and commentary between motocross and supercross, but I guess what I'm saying is I didn't know you.
Yeah.
And then because you kept yourself to a degree, and I kind of always had this, I don't want to say ego about me, but like I had to battle really fucking hard for every opportunity I got in Oz because no one knew me.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it.
So you know how it's the old boys club where everyone comes up together and they've just been in the game their whole, I didn't have that. So I kind of had this thing where with the TV role I had, it wasn't like I was kind of like not cool to everybody, but if people didn't overtly be like friendly, I just did my job, interviewed them. I wasn't trying to be boys with everybody, if that makes sense. So like for yourself, it wasn't like I just didn't know you, you know, and then you kept yourself to yourself and you had your circle. So it took me a few years and then I wouldn't say you had a reputation. I don't think that's the right word, but people were like, Dean kind of beats to his own drum. And I don't know if you hear that about yourself.
Well, yeah, I do now.
Yeah.
But like at the time, that's pretty much when I formed my circle.
Yeah.
I'd been through a lot of shit with a lot of people, and I'd pretty much formed my circle. Like this was me, and I did beat to my own drum, and I was kind of just there to do business. Like I was just all about the racing.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd just retreat to Kyogle, and I had like friends there that had tracks, and I felt like I had an awesome social life in Kyogle, and I was just riding and training, and then I'd just go to the race, and it was all business. So yeah, no, I get it. And I didn't even realize I'd kind of created that. You know what I mean? Like there was riding groups around the place, but I didn't, like I had it all down there. I had the best tracks. Renee and I were like, we just got together. She moved in with me to help me on the pit board, and that's all I needed. Yeah. It's like literally just her in the pit board, and then maybe a mate would come out and ride, but I wasn't relying on them.
No, you just joined a program.
Yeah, other people had created like a bros group because they wanted someone to ride with, and I didn't actually need that or want it. So yeah, I get what you mean. And you know what? I had a moment at the end of 2018. So I'd just done 3 years back in Australia, and I'd crashed out at the first round of Supercross, got injured. The team wanted me to come down to Geelong, do some media stuff or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is the first chance I've got to just relax in the paddock and go see my friends. And actually, it was at the Cat Stadium, and I remember walking into the paddock, and I'm like, just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, I actually got no friends here. Like, I was like, and then I just started to think like, oh man, well, I guess I haven't socialized. Like I just got to the race, went to the big blue truck, went to start line, went home. And that's what I did.
Yeah, you just did you. I mean, I got a funny segue, right? Because Jack Simpson, you know Jacko?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack's a rider that when I first started my PT and moto like coaching business over here in Victoria, he had just come off of 2 ACL recos, and he was like 2011, 2012. He would have been last year juniors. Anyway, I ended up taking him through for years, you know, coaching, gym, and his whole pro like MX Nationals career, and I still help him out now with the business side. But he was super young, and Jack was a pretty loose cannon when he was young. And I can't remember what year it was, but you guys were at a Fox shoot or something?
Yeah, I do remember. It's down at Dandenong, actually.
Yeah, and you like shared a hotel or something?
I think so.
Yeah, and he was like, Yeah, I can't. But you were obviously winning, and it was just funny because you came back and he was like, "Yeah, I shared a room with Ferris," and I was like, "Oh, cool, man!" Like, just talking. We were in the gym. I was like, "What's he like?" Because I've never really chatted to him away from the track. He's like, "He's pretty weird, eh?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I don't know. Like, he just has running shoes on. And he was running before the sun came up, and like, yeah." And Jack being Jack, a teenager, I guess it's just not the same work. Like, he's more disciplined and a different person now, but back then it was just the way. It was just you being dedicated to being Dean Ferris, but he was like, he's really intense. Like, I didn't really know what to say to him, or
Yeah. No, I do remember that that Fox thing we did. So, but yeah, it's not even until really recently that I've started to, like, I know I was intense, and I'm like, I was always like, I'm doing the thing to get the result. That was it. And I was critical, like, to probably people and mechanics that I was working with and stuff, but it's not even till recently I realized why I had that. You know what I mean? You start thinking back about your childhood and you're like, oh, actually it made sense why I like adopted that trait, or that trait was instilled in me by my parents. But yeah, man, when I set my mind to it and I've got a goal, it's just, there's nothing else, and I just go for it. And I guess where I'm going with this is, like, I had my blinders on. I just didn't actually care about what people thought, or it just was pretty not flexible. I was like, this is what I'm doing.
But that's the best way, right? Like, especially, again, if you're going to be like that and not be successful, maybe you do need to listen to people. Like, I've got plenty of times in my life where I've been headstrong and then
it's
I'm
not
like,
working out.
It's not working. Perhaps I should listen to people. But if you're getting results doing it that way, and you were the best for multiple years, why would you not do that? You got to back yourself. But that's a good segue. I do want to talk about your childhood, your upbringing. You don't have that typical standout junior. I know you were kind of that last generation, in my opinion, where there wasn't a straight line. Kids didn't drop out of school. Well, they did, but it probably wasn't as common. It was a little bit more organic.
It was so different, honestly. If we look back, and my wife Renee's from, like, motocross as well. We met at the Sunny States when we were younger, but man, we were all showing up in highest vans. Like, the coolest thing you seen was, like, someone had kind of put a bed or something in their Sprinter back then.
Yeah.
And that was it. So not many people dropping out of school. Like, I remember Todd Waters. I'm pretty sure he was doing school, but, like, he'd take Friday and a Monday off because he was from Cairns. The whole family would fly down, do the Sunny State.
Fly back up.
He'd fly back. He'd leave his van down there, and that was, like, a pretty sick set up then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But now it's like, the world's an oyster for the kids. It's like there's options to do so many different things.
I don't even know how good they have it, man. Like, as far as training programs and the racing, and especially in Australia, like, we'll get to that, but you've been to MXGP, you've been to America. I always beat the drum that this is such an amazing economy and domestic championship between motocross and supercross. One of the best in the world as far as opportunity. And, maybe when the level you were at, it was a bit of a fine line because you were probably too good for here, but to make it in America or Europe can be difficult being from here.
It was. And we'll get to that.
Yeah, I want to get to that.
We will. I've got a fair bit to say about it too, but talking about it being organic, like, it was the last of that. And you know what I've learned through coaching and even being here at Sunny Coast, where there's, like, kind of clubs and tracks around, is, like, kids are traveling to the track to ride the track before the race, whether it's a Sunny State coming up, a Queensland and national. Like,
well, they're all going to Wonthaggi this week to
you know what? I don't know if it was a thing back in the day. It might have been, some of the local kids be like, oh, if Tivoli's coming up, let's go practice. Oh, maybe, I don't know. But back in my day, there was no social media, and I was from northern New South Wales. I was doing all the Queensland stuff, but, like, the first time I got to ride the track was on race day. And that was just always the way it was. And I never in my head was like, oh, I'm disadvantaged because I don't get to ride the track. I was like, you just practice at home and, you pack up the trailer and you drive to the track. And that's how it was. And I think it's more how it was for everyone back in the day. It's not like this go travel, coaches open the track.
Yeah, I think, well, back in because, you're not that much younger than me, like 3 years or whatever. Like, and I raced in Australia as a kid. I remember what it was like, but I don't remember, when I lived in Oz as a kid, I lived in the Mornington Peninsula. So Frankston track you would have ridden there over the years.
Yeah.
that was just up the street. So we rode there every Wednesday just because it was a public track. But there was we raced every weekend, club race, arena cross night, state champs, regional. Like it was just race. You didn't, now the kids race 4 state rounds a year, 8 Prime X rounds a year, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they're professional trainers,
It definitely was more back in the day. There was like 8 sunny states, 3 Queensland races, 10 nationals, there was supercrosses, there's stadium crosses. So we were busy with that. But what I wanted to say is like, even in all of these years that I had access to go ride the track before the national or whatever, I didn't know it was a thing, right? Like I said, I always retreated to Kyogle. And if Coolum was coming up and it's going to be sandy, I just go to my local sand track and get sand practice in.
Yeah.
And that's how I did it. And I thought that's just kind of how everyone would do it. It wasn't until I was coaching in those years that COVID were around. I remember one time I put on a clinic at Harvey Bay because it's sandy, knowing that Coolum's coming up and everyone will come and learn how to ride the sand with me. No one come. It was like a very small clinic, just a couple locals. And I'm like, what's the deal? And it was another coach that had to point out to me, he's like, hey man, they want to ride the track that they're going to race on.
Yep.
And I remember it being glass shattering. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, can they not see the correlation? It's just sand. We're just working on skills.
Yep.
But no, and they still do it. Look, I think it's a little bit ridiculous because if you're taking your kid to the track all the time, this is my opinion, you take your kid to the track, they're going to race all the time, they get confidence from it, then it's like false confidence. You know what I mean? It's not.
I know what you're going to say. What's coming? Like, it's not the same when you race on it.
Well, it's never going to be the same. The kid can memorize the track, but like you need to learn to do that anyway. But when you get to the nationals and get to where you want to go and you don't have the opportunity to go do the track, you're going to do your head in. You're going to be like unconfident. You know what I mean? Like you're better off just working on the skills.
You set yourself up for failure
later on.
I agree. And it's hypocritical because when I was running my coaching business for years, like, man, when them calendars got released, it was like you're doing the black market, you're calling the clubs, like, what do I have to do to get this day? Like, this is the date because I know I'm going to crush it this weekend with numbers and make good money. And don't get me wrong, the riders and the parents got a good service and everything, but that was the game. But at the same time, you get there on race day, the track's completely different.
Oh, yeah.
And most of the kids, it wasn't like this. It's the coaching school, or like you said, they just have this false pretense of, well, what if it rains? What if it's hot? What if it's choppy today? What if it's ruddy today? Like, whatever. What I want to go back to, Dean, is even deeper. Your story, I don't know exactly, but is your dad not around? Or
No, yeah. I lost my dad when I was 11.
Sorry to hear that. I knew there was a deeper story behind that.
2001, my brother and I started racing. It was March 2001. We had a family business. It was really hard to get away from, but my parents made the effort. They could see that we were interested. So we started racing, and in the October of 2001, he passed away in just a tragic accident. So he was like gone like that. And then that's why I say I just did club days until I was 15. It was just like kind of pretty tough to get.
Or you would have been
it's just mum was a widow, 3 kids. We had like a mountain of shit that we had to take care of. And we had to get our lives in order. So
were you still at school or did you drop out?
No, I went the whole way.
You went through?
Yeah, I went through school.
So when I say drop out, I mean like the family business, like that's not uncommon, especially country kind of, but you stayed in school?
Yeah, I stayed in school till the end of year 10.
Yeah.
The situation was pretty heavy looking back, like we just did our best. And my mum always did her best to get me to the track. It was mostly club days. We did a couple of SEQs back in, maybe 04, 05. So, and in that time, like, I was still grateful. I was still getting to the track. You'd read magazines about the sunny state and the Queenslands and nationals, and it was like a dream, honestly. It was like I never knew my situation would ever get me there, but like I was just so interested in motocross. But, I did have land. I had a place to ride. I was still getting to club days, still doing my thing. So it was pretty cool that mum still got us there to do it. Yeah,
that's amazing. Sorry to hear about your dad there. When I said not around, I didn't know the actual
dynamic. Yeah. So, he's been obviously gone a long time. But
do you think that leads into, like, I know I'm asking some deep questions, but like you talk about you having a core group around you and you doing you, sounds like from a young age, I mean, hell, there's kids that are in their mid-20s that race that dad still does everything for them. You know, like the independent side of you, it was fostered from having to do that alone.
Yeah, there was benefits and drawbacks to him not being there. I mean, oh man, I had to become independent in the way that I had to, you know, I definitely always had to get everything ready to go to the race. Mum she'd get in the car and drive me there, but everything else was up to me and my brother, you know what I mean? So definitely had a big load to do that. And on top of all the chores and the farm work and the business and stuff like that. So that, you know, in that sense, made me more mature. I got to learn about my bike. I was changing tires on my 85, things like that. But when it comes to like having a core group in that, I feel like I was really disempowered in that area because I didn't really have my dad there to guide me and be like, hey man, just not everything's what it seems, you know, be careful. I was kind of just like a deer in the headlights with that shit, honestly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, ultimately the only people that really not have your back as such, but fully have your back, and dad has the experience and the years to guide you in that right direction. I mean, look, some dads are more of a hindrance than a help in the sport. We've seen that many times over the years. Yep. But yeah, hearing that, I'm like, you know, because yeah, you weren't a bro, you weren't there to be friends with you, but then I hear about what you had to do as a kid just to get to the track. Is, you know, that's why you're all about business, because that's what it had to be for you to do the sport.
Yeah, and it was, you know, like I definitely had to do all of school. Like Mum's like, you can't miss a Monday or Friday. Like there was a few times she pulled me out at lunchtime on a Friday if we're driving like to a far sunny state.
Yeah.
But had to do school, you know, had to get along in the household, you know, just had to pull my weight.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much like when my brother even started work, he didn't have time to work on his bike. I was working on his bike, my bike, throwing it in the trailer, packing everything. Like, man, I had to pack the esky. And when we got up in the morning, like I'd turn the coffee machine on for Mum. She'd get up, grab a coffee, drive me to the track.
You weren't old enough to drive, so.
Yeah, so she'd get me to the track and then sign me on, and the rest was up to me. So in that part, like I was responsible, I was empowered. But then it was kind of this strange journey. Like it was so much effort to get to the race. Like it was all on me, and when I'd get there, like I wasn't broing down, even in junior lights. Like it was just me and maybe my mate Matt from Yamba. We're in the same club. We're pretty tight. We got along as families, and that was it. We were like Northern Rivers crew. But for the rest, I didn't know the other kids. I'd see them running around, but I was like, I can't really run around and play. Like it's not really why I'm here, and got to put the steak on, got to put the dinner on while I'm camping. Got to set up the tent and stuff like that. So yeah, it was that was my journey early on. But then when I got my license and that, honestly, I wanted to bro down. I was like, wanted to find my crew, was like traveling around trying to ride with people. And that in those years, probably realized it's not really me.
Yeah.
As part of the journey, but also this is when like all the politics started with racing. Unfortunately, it's a part of the business, you know what I mean? And I was just this kid from Kyogle that had like zero experience with outside the work, like outside of Kyogle. Like, so man, like I said, I was a deer in the headlights. I was in this area of my life.
Yeah. It's so when did it go from club race? Because I'm curious to know, like I said, I know. All right, so first ever MX Nationals I went to, I'd been here for a couple of years, and I was like, all right, I want to get back into riding. I want to figure out what this is all about in Australia. And I found MX Nationals. Round one was at Broadford. So it was 2011. So I just drove myself to Broadford. And you were riding for Cowie, I think, that year.
Correct.
And I think you were pretty competitive in MX1 from memory.
Yeah.
So that was like 11. But going back further, how do you go from being like a local regional club, doing it on your own with mum and your brother, to Dean Ferris that I just not discovered, but the Dean Ferris I first saw in 2011?
Yeah, so I'll take you on a bit of a journey through the years. So like while I was doing the club stuff, I still felt like I was kind of above average. Like I was pretty good. I had some skills just from riding on the farm. I was winning club days.
Yeah.
Man, I did like the SEQ series. So actually go back, 04, I was like a B grader on an 85. And then 05, I ended up in A grade on 125s. Like I was just practicing at home. I wouldn't even call it training. That term didn't even exist then.
I'm just riding.
I was just riding, you know, with my mates.
And learning skills. And
and I started getting really good on the bigger bike. So that was 05. I ended up winning the SEQ series against like some like really gun juniors. I was like, oh, wow. And then the next year, you know, we started to get the family thing under control. We committed to doing the Sunny State series. Hadn't done any before. Right. I'd heard of Todd Waters, this kid from up north that's just killing everyone. I'd race him in the Junior Aussies, seen he was super fast. Like I did the Junior Aussies in 05. I finished 16th.
Yeah, right.
I made a post about it. Just like
I remember, I've seen posts over the years. But yeah, that's crazy to me that you know you'd have gone pro in 07, 08.
Yeah,
in 05 you were outside the top 10 at a junior national.
Yep. So 05, 16th. 06 was my last year in juniors, and I knew I was pretty good, but like I knew I wasn't Todd's level, and I pretty much just got second to Todd and everything. So I did the Sunny States. Mum committed to take me to the Queenslands just like last minute because all the other kids were going, and I remember there was this moment at like Chinchilla, Sunny State. One of the other parents asked me like, "Oh, you're going to come to like Mariba?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, we're not going. It's not really part of the plan." You know what I mean? And Mum told me years later she felt so bad that all the other kids were going and I wasn't. She's like, "All right, let's go do it. We'll make it a holiday." And we did. We had an awesome like holiday, just kind of me and her and her partner at the time. And I got second in that. So yeah, second in everything in 06.
Right.
To Todd Waters. And I remember like, man, what happened was someone had asked me towards the end of 06, like, "Hey man, I think you've got an opportunity to do this. Like, how bad do you want it?" And I was like, holy shit. Like, no one had ever asked me that. It was just, I was kind of just hiding from the question and avoiding because it wasn't really a reality, but like I was getting good really quick. And it was actually a coach that asked me and I just improved heaps in like the weeks that I was working with him. It was my first ever coach.
Right.
And I like stewed on it. I'm like, wow, do I really have this opportunity? I'm like, I think I do. Given that I just had a like crazy 5 years, lose my dad, like just everything going on, I just always had in my head that I don't really have the opportunity the other kids do. And when someone spelt it out, like you probably do, I was like, man, I just woke up in the morning and went, I'm going to fucking do this. And next race was Junior Aussies. My last Junior Aussies is down at Canberra. Man, got second again to Todd, but we were like on a level playing field because I just decided that I'm going to make this a career. Like I'm going to go for it. And we like traded motos. It was the first time all year that I was the same pace. But anyway, he won and it just crushed me. I like broke my heart. I was like crying, like just like not hysterically, it just like wouldn't take my goggles off because I was just tearing up, you know, because I was like, fuck, I really wanted that. And I thought it meant that it would get me a ride or get me noticed.
Right.
And I just thought I'd blew the opopportunity.
Right, but you'd blown your shot because you didn't win. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, right people were watching. They actually hired me because how upset I was. They're like, this kid really cares. So anyway, I got an opportunity with Yamaha to do like estate stuff.
Right.
It was like a dealer team. It was.
Right.
Yeah. So
so it wasn't even like an under-19s.
No, it wasn't. There was no under-19s team. It was a dealer state team, and I just took the bull by the horns. I'm like, I had a couple bikes. I had a parts budget.
Yeah, so everything you'd never had, right?
Never. Yeah. You know what I mean? I had to like beg mum to get me a new sprocket. Yeah. Like it was like...
I was going to say, if you're turning tyres around in the shed and making sprockets...
I had the angle grinder on the tyres trying to sharpen it up. Like
I know where you would have been at. So then for you to be like bikes and a budget... Like,
yeah, it was crazy, man. Yeah. Like I went from like having to show mum my sprocket, like there's no teeth left. She'd order me a sprocket kind of thing. Like, because, you know...
The kids today, if you're listening to this, like you need to hear like really what you went through. That's incredible.
Yep. So then, man, I just like, I'm going to take this opportunity. And this was right when I left school. Like, it was like the biggest breaking point ever. Like, because the deal was like, mum's like, I'll buy you one bike, like from when you leave school, but that's it. Like,
you're on your own.
You're on your own. So it was like, I knew I couldn't afford it. Oh man, so it was just like I was on the phone every day, like calling these people at Yamaha, this is going to happen, it's going to happen. And it took weeks and it took weeks and took weeks. Anyway, boom, got a YZ 450 to practice on. I was like happy as a pig in shit. Like you got no idea. Anyway, I just rode that thing all summer. I went and like reached out to that coach again. Fortunately, mum like seen the commitment that I was putting in and she started like helping pay for the coach. Like she could see how good I was getting. But I went from like, you know, okay junior, obviously like battled Todd for a championship in the end, and then rocked. I just did this whole off season, just like put in, was working on skills, like because that was the first time I'd ever got coaching. I was like, oh cool, there's so much stuff I can work on. I was just anyway, rocked up the next year in 07, first year in seniors, and I was just like, everyone was like, where'd this kid come from? Like I was so fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that 5-6 month period is where I just found my speed, found skills, and then I was, you know, on the scene in seniors.
Right.
But given, like I said, it wasn't an under-19s deal, no nothing, but I was going good. You know what I mean? Like I went through clubbing, went through intermediate, I was in expert. Me and Todd were in expert.
Yeah.
We were catching like all of the pros from the second gate drop at Sunny States.
Yeah. So you guys were the kids at that point coming up and.
Yeah, we were doing it together. Him and I. But then like mum was like, I was just going to do the Queensland rounds of the nationals. I was planning it out. How's it all going to work? Like mum's like, if you're serious about this, I'll drive you there.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. And I still remember at the dinner table when she said that, I was like just over the moon. I was like, oh man, it's just like, it's all coming together. And then man, I just had my biggest year ever. Like, just the racing calendar was just full from like first week in January all the way through until like end of nationals. Like I just raced every weekend. So yeah, that was a big year, 2007. Ended up getting a little bit more support from Yamaha. They're like, unfortunately, my dealer teammate had kind of got injured. I got to use his parts budget.
Right. So it kind of aligned as it needed to keep you going.
Yeah, that's right. So, man, there was nothing special about the bikes. They were stock, but they were free. And I was at the nationals racing and learning. So
is that under 19s existed?
That was under 19s.
Yeah.
Yep. That was the first year of under 19s, actually.
Yeah,
2007.
it was, right. Yeah. I remember people talking about that because I said that was before my time in Oz. But I heard about, didn't Brendan Harrison win that year?
Harrison won that year. Yeah, just by like 2 points over Todd.
Yeah.
Harrison started out stronger. Todd got better towards the end. I was kind of like this crash bandicoot. I had like won 2 or 3 motos that year, but would also crash out of a lot of them.
But people saw the promise. They saw the potential, obviously, which is often the case with, I don't know, MX3 now, right? But it's like you don't far out the amount of kids that win MX3 as a championship and never do anything in their career. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about showing the potential to learn the tracks, win races, have the speed that's comparable to the guys in MX2.
Well, actually, that year we got the chance to ride MX2 because under 19s was only
back then, right?
Yeah, it was only 7 of 10 rounds. So
I remember.
Like me and Todd wild card at like Echo Valley actually.
Yeah.
Todd won the first moto, and I got second in the second moto to Jake Moss.
Yeah, right.
Who went on to win the championship that year. So
you guys were on that elite level. MX2
we were on that
speed.
Level.
Shit. You went from basically a club rider in 05 to podiuming wildcard MX2 rounds in 2007.
Yep, absolutely.
Wow, that's a crazy ascension. That's why I wanted to touch on that because I was like, I knew your story was not, I'd never heard the full dynamic of it. But from your dad to you and your mom and your brother doing it, like that is, that's deep.
Yeah, it was a journey. I could talk way more about. There's so many challenges. There's just so many getting there, but I guess we're up to like 07 now. So from there, actually, got noticed by Yuriv Konski.
Yep.
He'd just taken over the Honda team for 08. So he signed me up. Rode for him for 2 years. I had a pretty rough time, I would say. The bike wasn't great. It was okay, but I was also still that crash bandicoot in 08. 09, I was shaping up to be a favourite, pretty much.
Is this MX2 still?
This is MX2.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I won my first moto in 2008.
Right.
So opening moto of the year, first time factory rider, won the very first moto of the first round, but that's all I won. That's the only single moto I won in MX2 for 2 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was difficult. 09, broke my elbow. Going back to that, and then I broke my wrist in Supercross later that year. It was a hard year, just actually more personally, just trying to work out who I am, the man I want to become. Like, you're getting pushed and pulled and here and there, and you don't really know what to do or where to be or
who to listen to.
There's just like information coming in here, and yeah, so like those years were really hard. Like that, they shaped me to what I am now, definitely. But yeah, 08, 09, factory Honda. In the end, I didn't have the results to hold my ride.
Right.
Like, honestly, I was probably pretty hard to work with, to be honest. Like, I was this kid that knew that I had potential, wasn't really getting results. I think they were just like, it's kind of easier to get someone that can get results and is not so difficult, because I was on the blower being like, I need this, I need your support. And I didn't, I was wanting more emotional support looking back than anything.
And that was probably manifesting in asking for things, because you probably didn't know how to, what young 20s or a teenager knows how to ask for emotional support.
Yeah.
Especially with your family dynamic, I'm assuming it would be difficult. Yeah, I could see how that would be tough, man.
Yeah. So those years were difficult. But man, went on with it as a privateer in 2010.
Oh, so you went privateer?
Yeah, privateer on a Honda 450.
No way.
Decided that, well, I don't really have the budget to build a good 250 and a lot of hard work. So fortunately, I did have a contact that helped me out within Honda, got me 4 free bikes. So it was still a pretty good situation being a privateer. Parts budget was blown by like the second week in January, but
as to be expected.
Yeah, so I wasn't too bad. Like, the bike was like stock. I just beefed up the forks with a couple shims from my mechanic Corey. It was really good. I was really stubborn. I was like, the shock is actually not too bad. Let's just leave that. And I went racing. Yeah, okay. Just like that. So, man, I was, killing all the preseason races, but at the Nationals, different beast. I was getting heaps of like podium motos, but I could not put a day together. Like, I'd get like a second, and then I'd get like a 5th, and then I'd get 4th overall. Yeah, right. And that was the story for like most of the year. And man, I was bummed. I just so badly wanted to be on the podium, because they were going to pay me like contingency as well.
Contingency for the podium spots.
Yeah, it was. And that didn't come until the second last round, actually. The big change was probably internally. Me, I was like ready to change. And I reached out to Pip Harrison.
Yep.
He did me a shock. He had some good settings. He knew way more about the bike than kind of we did at the time. And man, went to Moree, boom, like won a moto or 2 motos, I don't know, but beat him straight up. Yep. So there was Marmont then, Cooper, Mackenzie, like it was a big field. Yeah.
The field back then was gnarly. Like I still tell people to this day, I'm like, the first Pro MX Nationals, that I ever raced, we had to qualify in MX1. And I'm not talking about like, you had to actually be pretty legit to be in that fast 40. It's changed a lot over the years.
Yeah, well, 2011 was gnarly, and we were about to get there. Just talking about how heavy it was with competitors. But so anyway, that 2010 was pretty cool. Looking back, definitely emotionally challenging. Still trying to work out what to do, how to be who I want to be. Didn't feel like I was really empowered in that area. Like kind of disempowered. I didn't have money. I didn't have like a ride. I didn't have my own place. Those things. That was really challenging.
Yeah, I can't imagine you being the kind of like talking about it, like the bro thing. Like, you don't strike me as the kind of guy that was out running chicks and like, being one of the boys either, right? So you're just like banging your head against this wall, being like, I know I can be this elite level racer, but you're probably making minimal money, especially as the privateer deal, probably making no money. You're living off of what you made.
No money. Before. I was living at home with my mum, and I'm like 20 years old.
Yeah.
So,
and yeah, like you said, you're trying to find the emote because your mum obviously is doing what she can. But I see the disadvantage that I say first generation families have, like yourself, like my dad never raced. And it's like, man, the things that like my son's probably not going to do it. I don't think so. Like he rides BMX, and I don't. I'll be straight. I want to go to the track for the next 25 years. Like I'm not that into it anymore. You know, if he was like, I really want to ride, I would probably do it.
Oh man, it'd be such an advantage to have like someone with experience that had been there and raced.
Imagine, like I look at Vial now, I look at Deegan, I look at all these Everts, like all these, and I know they're extreme world champion and big level name dads, but even a father that's even had a modicum of an idea of what the industry is about.
Yep.
Like the guidance you could give if you know, say your dad had raced and was around with you.
Yeah.
Man, your career trajectory would have been completely different.
Oh, yeah. Huge advantage for those people who've got a father or someone in their corner to help with that. And like my mum admitted, she's like, I don't know nothing about motorbikes, but then like, you know, had people come into my space and just convince my mum that they knew what they were talking about. Yeah. So then like my mum would push onto me like this person or this mentor, and then I would also get sold the dream, and then it just ended up just not working out.
There's so many agendas, right? Like people trying to make money off you, be a coach or whatever, or people are trying to have you run their product.
Yeah, sure. But there's also people out there that are really giving their best, even if there's nothing.
There's no hidden agenda, but they're genuine to the level of what they know.
What they know,
but
you know what I mean?
It's not what you need to be doing.
Exactly. So a lot of egos getting thrown around. I'm saying I don't have one, but like some people are like so sure on their idea, even if like you're not paying them and things. But and it's kind of a touchy subject because so many, you know, good-hearted people are trying to help, but it's maybe not the best guidance you could get. No. But talking about that, because we're at 2010 now, man, that's when Glenn Bell actually come into my space.
Yeah, right.
And big regret I have is like not just keeping him closer, because he was there willing to say like to help me, but he's such a modest guy if you've ever met Glenn Bell.
Very modest.
Like one of the most successful riders ever in Australia. But like I just didn't have that filter to go, oh, he's successful, I'll just learn from him. I was just getting sold, you know, elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So I really needed him to just like grab me around the scruff of the neck and go, dude, I know stuff that you need.
Yeah. But a lot of guys, especially like Glenn, wouldn't do that because it's like you're either gonna engage with me and listen or not. Yeah. You know?
So
I think
like
the older you get and the more you're probably the same now, right? Like I know I don't know if you still do coaching anymore, but like, yeah, you kind of get to a point where you don't need it, like you're not chasing the money, or you know, I got to that towards the end of my coaching thing where it wasn't my sole income anymore, and I did it because I enjoyed it. And then I was just like, man, if you're not going to listen, I really can't be chasing you to do it. So yeah, it is what it is.
That is what I'm like now.
Yeah,
with people that, you know, want help, I just kind of pick and choose and just say it how it is. It's not. So yeah. Anyway, kind of wish you'd done that, or I wish I'd had the filter to go, oh man, you're a champion, you're going to know something that I don't know. I didn't have that, which sucked because Glenn was right there in my corner. We're still mates, and I've never actually told him that, to be honest, but he would know that as a champion, like all the mistakes I was making. I just felt like I was kind of getting the feel goods from people of them saying like, dude, you're just like one step away from greatness. Yeah. And I really needed Glenn or someone experienced to say, dude, you're a long way from greatness. Yeah. You know, like there is a lot of stuff you need to learn. There's no like magic pill. There's nothing, mate. You just got to learn all this stuff. And when mistakes happen and shit happens, because it rarely works out in the early days, how you picture it to work out. All of those challenges are your lessons.
Well, they shape you. And like getting this rundown, now I can see, we'll get to Europe because I really want to talk about that. But when you came back, now you've seen the world and you've had all the hard years here, and you're like, now I know exactly what I need to do and how I'm going to do it. And then you go on a tear and just win everything. We'll get to that. But I can see now how it led to that crescendo in your career where you're like, now it's my time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, all of this will lead to that. But I wanted to talk about 2011 briefly because, man, talking about like heavy years of competition, man, that was stacked. So there was Marmont. He had just won 3 in a row. Yeah. We had Coppins back from Europe.
Yeah. Mackenzie was
like blazingly fast. There was me. There was Cody Cooper.
Yeah.
There was some other fast guys as well. Like Todd was fast on a Honda. And there's some wild cards, like some other guys from New Zealand. So that year was, man, I learned a lot in that year.
That year, not to interrupt you, but that was the first MX Nationals I'd ever been to. And I hadn't been to my last pro race I'd ever been to was 2007 in the UK when I was racing pro in 450 as a privateer. I said, drove myself out to Broadford, and I could not believe, like, number one, the level of riding. I was like, holy, like I'd been to GPs and such, and I'd raced Coppins and those guys in England. And I was like, this is not that far off of international level racing. And more so that moment where you talk about where you're like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'd been out of it for so long. And then when I drove out to Broadford that day and I was in the pits, and I was like, I just said to myself, I'm like,
you want to be a part of it?
I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a part of this. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to do it. I don't know what it looks like. I just start riding again. I just start racing. I didn't know it would lead to the media career, but I was just like, there's too much opportunity. And the one thing I learned about Australian culture, and this sounds like a negative, I say this sometimes, and I don't want to hijack your story, but it's like, you get it because every little opportunity you had, you made the most of it. And it's not like everybody's story doesn't end up with them being a 4-time champ and being Dean Ferris, right? But like, I saw right away, like, went to the local dealership after that. I'm like, hey, I used to race, like, what's to go with support? Oh yeah, race plan. I'm like, race plan? What the fuck's a race plan?
Yeah, right.
Oh, I can get a bike for $4,000 cheaper, and I can finance this 450. Because again, I'm on my own, right?
Yeah.
Like, I got my similar.
And you're pretty young, like 22,
I'm like
23.
21, 20 years old, right? Anyway, short story long, but that year when I went to that race, I was just like, dude, this is it. Like, there's Rockstar, Monster Energy. Like, I came from being a privateer in the UK in the back of my dad's Transit chipper truck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where we just, there was no way out of you'll know this, like, no way out of the UK scene unless you had money or you were exceptionally good, because the only way forward was buying your ride. That's the economy over there.
Yeah, it is like that in Grand Prix.
You know, Grand Prix in Europe. And I did races in France. I did races in Belgium. I did all that stuff, but it was like, there was nothing. Parents wouldn't let me drive out of school and wouldn't remortgage house, buy you £100,000 ride, which back.
So that's pretty cool. So like, you had opportunity to go get a race plan and show up and race.
Yeah, I was just like, what can I make? I was just hooked. So like, at the time,
it was pretty sick. Like, the paddock was a vibe then, I would say.
It was. And like I said, coming from where I came from, and we'll get back to you and your racing year, I don't want to hijack that, but I was just like, again, I always say to the kids I used to work with, and even the media side of it now, I'm like, you guys have no idea how good you have it in Australia. Because if you want to find a way to make it work over here, you still can.
Make it work.
Like, even now, they're like, it's not what it used to be, but back then it was.
It's like that old saying, though, you don't know what you don't know. Like, it's kind of all relative. So these kids are thinking, oh, there's no opportunity. They've only heard there's no opportunity, but you're like, bro, I've seen the lack of opportunity elsewhere.
Like, and they think America's the land of opportunity, but it's like, you're going up against thousands of kids that are at that level, and their parents are just throwing everything at it. But yeah, that year though, getting back to it, the level of riding, I think it was a mud race, the second moto, it rained.
Yeah, bro, big storm come in. Yeah. So we did like this crazy format. It was just 4 back-to-back motos.
That was the year of the back-to-backs. That's right.
Man, it come in, the storm, and anyway, it was crazy trying to race through it. I think Mackenzie won the day. I don't know, I flaked a moto or two, went okay in a moto or two.
And you were factory cowie that year, right? Troy Carroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the CDR boys had struggled in the mud. Like, their bike wasn't that good, I don't think. By memory, they were really struggling. Because you'd think like Coppins is going to be great, but he was struggling. So yeah, no. What I wanted to say about that year is, like, when people ask me like, oh, who's the toughest rider you've raced? Who's the fastest? Man, I always revert back to that year, because there's just so many lessons. Like, if you talk about toughness, like, Marmont comes to my mind. Like, that guy was just so hard to race against. You just would never give up. Like, he was like not a 5-star at anything. He was like good all-rounder and would just get it done with what he had. So like, that guy was tough. I took a lot of lessons from how good he was that year in that department. And then Coppins was just, he was on his way kind of down and out of speed, and you know what I mean? He was probably a bit older, and he definitely didn't have his 2007 form coming to Australia.
Yeah. But he was still at a high level.
High level, but man, he was so experienced because I was this kid that was like really fast. But trying to race against him, he just put the bike exactly where he needed it, so I couldn't pass. Yeah. If he knew I was faster, like he'd just read me like a book, and he couldn't even like. It's like he had eyes in the back of his head.
Thousands of hours of experience.
Yep.
Yep.
It was cool racing him too. He was always like fair. We're like always had like after the race, we're like that was a cool race. Like I was pretty much like I'm learning so much from you, man. As hard it is as it is to like beat you. So he wasn't act like that fast, but so experienced. Like learn a lot from where he chose his gate, how he went about his business. Mm-hmm. And then there's Mackenzie, and like, man, that guy on his day was so fast.
He's a freak on his day.
Yeah.
When he decides that today is the day he's going to go.
So when I think about how fast people are, I'm like, that guy on his day was just like, he couldn't do it every round. Mm. But man, when the stars aligned, he was on.
He was. I mean, he did it in supercross. Like he had no business being as good a supercross rider as he was. I mean, like Mackenzie was always that bit older than me in Europe. So I never raced him until we went to the pros. And I think the couple of years that I was racing pro, I don't think we were in the same classes, or I don't remember. But like I remember him always being around, and there was a bunch of the Mackenzies. And when I was really young, my dad ran a track, and they used to come train at our track a lot. Way back in the 90s. But yeah, there was like, they were always their own vibe. Like there was like the Mackenzie clan, and like being from Scotland as well. Like clan. It was a legit, I think there was Brian, I forget, he had a brother, I think it's Stevie maybe.
I met them all. It might have been Stevie is like a kind of
a bigger dude. Because he was I used to race Stevie. He was like my age, and I remember
they'd come out. They all got out here in 2011 actually.
Yeah,
so
probably
I got to know them while they were teammates, and I think I even rode with Brian a couple of times in Cuyahoga. Like Mackenzie would come over from, I think he's staying in Byron. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I think he adapted to that life.
He adapted to Byron.
He was like all about it.
He got sucked in there.
But I remember still, to Mackenzie, like I never raced GPs, but I remember I'd go watch the GPs in the UK, and some years he was kind of average, but like if he felt it on a 250, especially, he would just run up front.
Yeah.
Like he'd go from being a top British guy to just being a world level guy in the span of a weekend.
Yep.
You know?
So he was blazingly fast, but also not that fit. He was out here on a.
I don't think he was training, man.
He was out here on a holiday, to be honest. But talking about being fit was like that was also Coppins, and he was just so solid, and that leads me into 2012. So like it went all right that year. Won only a few motos, didn't win any overalls. What else happened that year? I only finished 4th overall.
Right.
I held the red plate till the second last round, broke my thumb at Moree.
Right.
Threw the championship away. It was going to be tough. Like it was pretty tight, honestly.
That's a pretty gnarly going from privateer in 2010 though to, I didn't know you had the red plate in 11.
Yeah. I took the red plate at round 2 in Appin and held it. I think I might have lost it for a round, but then got it back and then held it all. And this is when there was 10 rounds. Held it all the way till, second last round. I had the red plate in my bike, and I had like maybe 17-point lead, and then I crashed, broke my thumb,
But either way, you'd arrived at that point.
I'd arrived.
You were winning races. You were leading the championship. You took that next step.
Yeah, I still had a lot to learn though. Like my body wasn't strong enough. Needed some more experience. Probably needed a little bit better bike in some departments. It was decent that Cowie, but like, when the track got rough in the end, the Yamahas at the time were handling a fair bit better, but that was enough to and just how it all panned out. I remember then I crashed at Coolum at the last round as well. Just riding with a broken thumb, got pummeled in the first corner. I actually accidentally crashed and took out Coppins, which actually I took the championship. Like he lost championship because of that.
That was the first time crash.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
right.
I went down. He went down with me, and you know what's crazy about this is like on the start line. The last thing, because Coppins was going to win it, right?
Yeah.
On the start line, what Marmont did, they were teammates. He come up and stole Coppins' gate. Right. He goes, sorry, man, I want that because he qualified ahead. And Coppins was cool as a cucumber, no problem. Went and moved closer to the inside where I was. Dude, I went down, took down him and probably another rider or two. Marmont was on the outside, clear run, won the championship. It's So when you know that backstory, I'm like, dude, that was
so meant
I'm
to be.
like the
almost.
only one that would remember that. Or it happened right in front
like
of me.
you saw it play out, and then
Yeah.
the next minute you're on the ground.
Yeah, and I don't think Coppins was rattled at all. He kind of expected it because that's all Marmont had in the end.
Yeah, just had to play some sort of game. Yeah.
Anyway, unfortunately, Coppins got caught up in the first turn crash. Anyway, so, but yeah, man, I had to learn a lot. I had to get, in a lot of departments a lot better. But because that happened, and that's where I was going, I crashed out. I remember being so bummed. I'd lost the championship the week before. I was in the medics again. I was like, dude, like I hadn't even won an overall in Australia. Not one MX2.
So you had the rep play and everything.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You had overall.
Yeah, never had an overall. Not in under 19s, not an MX2, not an MX1. And I remember it was actually AJ Roberts come up to me while I was in the medics. He goes, hey, man, if you're thinking about going overseas, it mightn't be a bad thing. He goes, the problem with my career is I got paid too much to stay here. And at this point, I wasn't getting paid a lot.
I was going to say, were you making money at this point?
No, not a lot. Like I signed on for like 55 grand. And
typical Aussie kind of economy.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually pretty good for back then.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It's just me and a backpack. I'm just going.
Yeah, right.
So I went to Europe, picked up a ride with Ice One Kawasaki, and that was me for 2012. I started in the Grand Prix.
So Grand Prix, like I said, I'm well aware of how things are structured over there. You sign with Ice One. Are you signing on for money? Are you paying for your travel?
Yeah, no, I signed on for 50,000 euro.
Yeah.
So it was enough to survive.
Yeah, okay.
But no more. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it was like an opportunity is what it was. But the year, not much to say about it. I was actually pumped to be in Europe. Like I had a fat time, mate. Like I'd been to Sweden a few times. My mum's she's Swedish, so I'm half Swedish, and kind of knew what to expect with the culture and that. And I took all that on. Like I didn't struggle with that at all.
Where were you based?
I was in Belgium.
In Belgium.
Yeah,
okay.
and fortunately I made friends the year before when I was just over there kind of trying to look for a ride.
Yeah.
With this family. Like he had 2 kids that are like my age, and the dad was a mad dog, loved mountain biking, and I just got along with him like a house on fire. So it's like I just moved over there and just had this family that I just belonged to.
Yeah, okay.
And that's how I survived there so long, to be honest.
Yeah.
But year one was amazing. I was traveling to all different countries, traveling around the world. I really enjoyed that. For the riding, it was never great. The Grand Prix that I did like 5 or 6 before I got injured. I dislocated my shoulder in France and needed a shoulder reco. But it was an amazing time doing it, but I got my ass kicked. I was not fit enough. I was not fast enough.
Again, though, you're going from domestic level to world level, Well,
exactly. But this is what happened. I just got my ass kicked, and I was like, every moto, they were 40 minutes long, and I was just, tongue was hanging in the spokes. And to be honest, I was not fit enough in 2011 racing Marmont and Coppins either.
Yeah.
Like they did me in that department, and I knew it.
So
and I was just doing what I knew. You know what I mean? I didn't know any different. And it was that point, I was like, I was talking to Chris Urquhart on the phone. I was like, man, I'm getting my ass kicked over here. I'm just not fit enough. I'm going to have to do something. And he goes, hey man, I know this fella named Guy Andrews. He's a ex-Ironman champion. I think you should just hang out and hook up. And I was like, yeah, sweet. So when I got back to Australia for the off season, at this point had no ride to go back yet. I was still working on it. I met Guy. Right. He was running like a CrossFit kind of deal at the moment with his wife, Alana. Yep. And I just showed up.
Big back then, the CrossFit thing.
Yeah, it was kind of new and it was like trendy. And so I started showing up. He's like, hey man, what's your sport? Motocross. I'm like, he wanted some data.
Yeah.
He's like, this is gnarly, dude. Like, how do you keep your heart rate there? Like, what do you? I'm like, I need help, man. I'm not fit enough. So he's like, well, you can never do enough to be fit for this. So anyway, we started mountain biking in the morning. Then we'd get back to his studio to do CrossFit. And then I showed up like the next day or the next session, might have been 2 days later. And I was driving from Kyogo to Gold Coast just to do this. I wanted to learn something from him, right?
Oh, right.
And then at the end of the week, I went to pay him. And he goes, oh, don't worry about that. He's like, I've been looking for a training buddy and you've showed up every day.
Yeah.
He's like, just show up, train with me, and we're
All
good.
Yeah, right.
So, dude, I was like so pumped. Anyway, before I met Guy, I didn't know about Ironman series. I'd had to do my research, and I'm like, holy, this guy's gnarly. Like what he's won, like 3 times Ironman champion. So
gnarly is a word.
Yeah, so like that was a huge series. A lot of you guys in the podcast would know, but some of you younger fellas won't know. But like it was on like streamed on live TV for 10 years straight on a Sunday, and it was Surf Ski Ironman Championship. It was Uncle Toby's. It was sponsored by. So it was really big. I just didn't have free-to-air TV when I was younger, but he's a household name. Like those athletes then were like probably the best ever in Australia.
Yeah.
You know.
The golden era, so to speak.
Yeah, the golden era. So, yeah, I didn't know about it before I got there. But anyway, he's just a normal guy. I never had him on a pedestal because I didn't know about his accolades and stuff. Man, we just started training together, and fortunately, he teaches in storytelling. So while we're cycling or mountain biking or something, he'd just talk about experiences and things, and I'd just pick up on it.
Soak it all in.
Anyway, I just did like 4 or 5 months with him that off season. Listen to what he said. I actually had to unlearn everything I thought I knew about the body, completely about diet, about how you train, why you train, put a little bit of science behind it, just enough that I could grab it and be like, that's enough reason for me to do it. Because I'm not a details guy. I just put my trust in him. I'm like, that's enough.
You know what you need to know, and the rest is,
And in that time, I pulled off a MX2 ride to race for Dixon Yamaha, which was the factory MX2 team.
So that was when it was factory Yamaha MX2 back then, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. That's when they had the Cosworth motors.
Cosworth motor. So the thing was fast as...
So were you based in Europe or UK?
No, I was still based in Belgium.
That's
the
when
next
the
year.
team was based in Belgium.
Yeah. So he was like, hey, I've got a guy over there that can be your practice mechanic. I'll pay for him. I was like, sweet. Because I didn't even have a practice mechanic when I was at Ice One.
Yeah, you'd been doing it yourself.
Yeah. So, man, I only got 25,000 euro, which is like not enough to survive. Like, honestly, I'm like, I'm going to have to get some start money at some of these Dutch races. But I was like, cool.
Make it work. Yeah.
I've got an opportunity to stay in the Grand Prix, try to live the dream. So, man, showed up at round 1. I literally flew from Australia to round 1, met the team there. I did a testing session back in December in Europe, in England. Got the bike, whatever. That's fine.
So were you riding 250s back home?
Yeah, I had just a stock 250
just
back
something
here.
To ride, yeah.
Brought home suspension, something to ride. Went to round 1 that was in Qatar, so the Middle East, and got on the podium. Was second overall to Jeffrey Hurlings and third with Romain Febvre.
Yeah.
So again, I'd kind of just arrived.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people were like, who is this kid? And I was pretty confident that I was going to be good enough for podiums that year.
Still though, MX2 podium and MXGP is no easy feat. Like,
no, it's not. But I hadn't ridden a 250 since 09, and even I had some doubts about if I could ride it because that was the story everyone was saying. Dino can't ride a 250 because he went 450 and started doing good. Yeah,
but the way you ride a bike though, you're not. You were always fit and aggressive on a 450. Maybe you weren't fit back in the day, like you say, but to the level you were when you had your championship runs. But you were never a guy to lug a 450. You rode it hard.
Yeah, I rode it hard.
So it would translate to you being able to drop back onto a 250.
Yeah, so I adapted well. My body size is probably at that size where I could ride both at the time.
Yeah, like you probably would have been weighing, 80 back then?
No, 70.
Yeah, so you were good.
Yeah.
Especially with those engines.
I've never been 80 kilos, but...
I want to talk to you about the gear. They had like the 4-speed...
No, 3-speed.
3-speed factory box.
3-speed box that he built like himself, like him and his engineer. So he was all about engine performance, and the less moving parts in an engine, the faster he could get it to go, right? So he dropped out 2 gears. It was actually first and second that he dropped out because I believe they're the biggest, like the bigger cog.
Yeah.
And I had 3rd, 4th, and 5th in my bike. He cut in his own neutral and changed the primary drive.
Yeah.
So I'd start in first, and I was mostly 2nd and 3rd around the track.
Dude, so when I first started racing in Oz, right, I actually, that first RMZ I'm talking about, blew up. And then I just got some 252 strokes. It's back when you could ride 252 strokes in lights. Anyway, called my dad in England because he still knew people. And I'm like, is there any old 2-stroke stuff laying around you can get me? Anyway, so not the same as the Dixon thing, but found someone, I don't know how. Anyway, sends me this kit, right? It's a barrel with an extra inlet port. It's a special carb. And first, second, third gear from a YZ 426 bolt that into your gearbox and your 252 stroke. Here's a jetting. And he's like, the guy says this thing's going to be a wet, because obviously the 2-stroke technology in Europe was good, right?
And is this like Dixon stuff?
I don't know. Rinaldi, like it came from, you know, someone had it somewhere on a shelf. Anyway, I ended up with it over here. And just hearing you talk about the gear, you remember Steve Powell?
Oh, I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, he was like a tech down in Vic that I used to do a lot with SPMX. And I remember giving him this kit. I'm being like, oh yeah, just see what you can do with this. Like, just split it. I don't know. But to your point of the moving part, and Powell was like, man, I've never seen nothing like this before. But the thing was just so fast, but so easy to ride. But I can only imagine on the factory level that you're talking about with those 250s, because that was the year you whole shot the nations, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to hear all about, because, yeah, I kind of relate on my ability. Just getting the pit board from the producer. Is that 35 minutes, Adam? Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, man, those bikes looked incredible, to summarize.
Yeah, so it was super fast. It didn't actually handle that good. I really struggled with that all year. I was banging my head against the wall. I actually got a podium at Qatar, podium at where was it? Portugal.
Yep.
But man, I just rode the thing 90 to the finish line. I was just like so determined.
Wide open, yeah.
A lot of other rounds I was struggling. Was like 7th, 8th. Like, oh man, I was like, it's beating me up. I just can't. Like, it's just not where I want it to be. But towards the end of the season, maybe like in like August, KYB had been hassling me because I was running Olin's. They're hassling me saying, hey, I think your bike can be a lot better. They're like, can we do a test with you? And I finally gave in and said, we can do a test, but there's no chance I get to run this, just so you know. Man, bolted this KYB stuff in 2 seconds a lap faster.
Yeah, right.
I went back and forwards to make sure. Sure enough, it was that good. And I was like, oh. I got nothing to lose. I'm kind of struggling for results and, you know, so I called Dixon. I was like, hey, this is what I've done. I'll leave it with you. He sends me back a message not long later, goes, and he was pretty cool like that. He was open for change, and he's like, hey man, you can run that suspension, but you can't have KYB stickers on there. Yeah. I was like, sweet. So out of my $25,000, like 25,000 euro budget, I like spent, I don't know what it was, like 6,000-7,000 euro. I bought it on the spot. And this is like a Wednesday at Honda Park in Belgium. Yeah. And the last thing he said, so we must have been on the phone. He's like, you gotta like deliver. I'm like, I'm gonna be on the podium. Just hung up, dude. Flew to Finland, bolted this shit in, and I was like, boom, 2nd overall, just straight back on the podium after like this big drought of like no results. And like, man, I was stoked. I have to pull up a photo, and like you knowing the backstory, I was so pumped. I was like. So anyway, that's when my season started getting rolling. We only had a few Grand Prix left. Went to Checo, struggled there. It was like me struggling on the track. It's like a track from the dinosaurs, mate. It's so slippery.
Yeah, that's Czech Republic is, what's the name of that track?
Lockout.
Lockout, yeah, that's an old school GP track.
Old school GP track, and I struggled there. But then the next, like a fortnight later after that, I was outside top 10 in Checo, by the way. I was like, oh, I just put in like the gnarliest 2 weeks of training, and I was taking a motorhome to the Belgium Grand Prix, which is like 3 hours south of Lommel or something like that, 2 hours south. Picked up my mate on the way. I had to go borrow cash from my manager because I had no cash left. Right. I was out, like broke to get groceries to go there. So we drove down, but at this point I just put in like so much for the whole year.
It's so gnarly, hey, like you're talking about podiuming GPs. So were you on no bonuses?
No, I had bonuses, but I hadn't been paid.
Yeah, you're still waiting for
payments, you know, like Dixon is notoriously slow for paying. So anyway,
that's GPs.
Yeah, that's GPs. General. Yeah. So anyway, I drive down there, but I'm like so burnt out. Like I remember thinking, I'm like, I just don't know if this is worth it. Like all of this, like I'm broke. I'm just trying my hardest. It's been
demoralizing, right? You're still demoralizing.
I've been trying my hardest for like, this is 2013. So like since 07, like 6 years of like still broke, still just have a backpack. Anyway, man, I just kind of went in with this no fucks attitude to Belgium Grand Prix. Got a whole shot in quali race. Me and Hurlings are just checking out. We're gone. He crashes trying to get around me. Like, I was fast. He breaks his shoulder. I win the race. So we all know that night that Hurlings isn't lining up and no one else has won a Grand Prix.
Right.
So, but I was like still so burnt out that I was like, I don't even care. Like, I'm pumped that I won the race today, but I couldn't even.
Nothing left. Yeah.
Like, whatever. I've been in this position so many times where I'm like getting all elated and pumping myself up and thinking that's, I'm going to change the world, and it's not, and it hasn't happened. So I think the other riders lost sleep. I didn't. Slept like a baby. Got up. Man, first moto, my teammate was in my way for like 30 minutes, just filling me in. My goggles were ruined. Worked out how to get around him through my goggles. Like, had to fight for it. Just fought and fought and fought. I won my first moto in the Grand Prix. Like, but I was still like cool, but like I've never put together a day.
Yeah.
Like, even in all my MX Nationals, I've never really strung it together. Anything could happen. I'm not getting elated. I was pissed at my teammate at the time for like letting all the Frenchies by once I got him. Like, I was just like, whatever.
Who was your teammate that year?
Maxime Dupre. So
Yeah,
he still races Supercross, actually.
Yeah, he's a good rider.
Yep. And then, so I didn't get elated, nothing. That was my problem. Like, in early days, I'd always get elated about the result or whatever.
Too invested in it.
And then something would happen and it'd bring me down. But I didn't have that. I didn't have anyone there around me. My mate that I drove there with was flagging on the track. But he was cool anyway. He was really good for my mindset. He was pretty good at mountain bike racing. But back to the story, gates drop again. I like pass for the lead and check out for the race. And I go 1-1 and win the Belgium Grand Prix.
That's so nice. Not only to win your first Grand Prix, but to do it in Belgium. What track was it?
Bastogne.
Yeah, which is like, that's incredible, man.
And that was one of those tracks, going back to earlier in the podcast, I'd never ridden the track.
No, you wouldn't have.
Just rocked up. It was long as, like 2 minutes, 20 lap time.
That's an old school Belgium bush GP track.
Dude,
right?
that's where the Battle of Bastogne happened.
Yeah,
like,
like World
there's
War
like
II.
metal and stuff coming out of the track from World War II or one, whatever it was.
Yeah. Adam, I think here's what we're going to do. If you're cool with it, Dean, because we've only got like under 30 minutes left of camera time. Do you want to do a part 2?
We can do part 2.
I don't want to skip all this stuff now,
just to get to the end.
Just to get to the end. I'd rather, because I want to dig into America, and let's maybe come back another week and we'll... No, that's cool. I reckon, because I'll be pretty fucking brain fried after 2 hours.
Oh, well, let's keep going with 2013.
We'll keep going with it all. We'll keep this in the pod. I think this is real. You're local. I'm local. Like, in a few weeks, let's jump back in and do, and we can do like, when you get back from Europe, right? We'll do Australia to now, because a shitload of stuff has happened. But I don't want to, like, here's the thing though. You win that GP. Like, I remember you being over there, because by this point I'm fully back in the racing scene, right? But I don't remember it being that big of a deal. That, like, I remember you being over there. I remember an Aussie winning GPs, and I remember the Motocross of Nations making a lot of noise that year. But I don't feel like what you're telling me is getting the feedback it deserved here.
Yeah, well, I wasn't back here, so I didn't know what was going on. Would have been cool if the news called and be like, hey, because I'm still one of 4 that have ever won a Grand Prix. Yeah. Aussies. There's Leask, Reed, McFarlane, and myself.
Well, you're one of the most successful Australian, like, if I was to do a hyped up intro, like commentator Joe, like 4-time champ and one of the big, but you're one of the most successful riders to ever do it from Australia. But I don't know, maybe the TV was different back then. I just don't remember seeing a lot of it.
Europe hasn't been that followed by Australia. Like, we've always followed America.
Yeah, it's more American.
Back then it was like pretty much streamed on TV. You didn't even need to pay for it. It was on Foxtel.
Right.
Where like already Europe and the Grand Prix you had to pay for, and it was like definitely a long way away. Like, America felt like it was...
Oh, it does, right? And I guess, talking about being far from home, and for you, I don't know, like for me, I said I was fully in the scene now at this point, and I don't remember hearing Ferris just went 1-1 at the Belgium GP. Like, it seems bizarre to me that wasn't bigger news, but maybe it was still that transition where Europe wasn't cool back then. MXGP is like cool now. Yeah. Like, they're all scrubbing and they look like America, and we've got the TV package that you can buy, and MXGP is cool now. I don't think it was back then as cool as it is now, and maybe the following...
You're probably right. But I just want to go back to this Belgium Grand Prix.
Keep going on that.
Yeah, so I won it. That was cool. I was still broke. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I was getting cash that day.
Yeah, you're not getting cashed up. Well, there's no prize money from the GPs, right?
Had to invoice, but that wasn't even going to come through from Dixon, honestly.
2014.
No,
yeah.
I still haven't got it. But anyway, I don't even need to go into that. It's fine. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I actually met this couple that were traveling on their honeymoon, and they were Aussie, and they were from WA. They come and introduce themselves, and because I'm like this lone wolf in the GP paddock, every Aussie I meet, I'm like, oh,
latch onto it.
Anyway,
almost,
so they were my age, and she become my like flag girl, like behind the, like I got him on the start grid.
Yeah, right.
She was like holding the Australia flag for me, and they just thought it was unreal. Anyway, I had him on the podium with me. We got pictures. I just thought it's so cool. There was
that's the story.
An Aussie couple. So shout out to Brennan and Disha. We're still friends to this day.
That's so cool.
First day that I met them. Anyway, my mechanic at the time, he was a French guy. We got along great. He's like, hey, you guys were the lucky charm. Like, do you want to come to next weekend in England at Madeley Basin? So they come there as well to help me out and support me, which was so awesome. Like, finally, like, felt like I had some friends over there.
Yeah.
Won the first moto, like, checked out. Like, Jeffrey still wasn't there.
Yeah.
My whole shop was just gone. I was like, man, but obviously the elation got to me, flipped it in the next moto, smashed my tank, like, DNF'd.
Right.
So was absolutely devastated.
So the consistency is still eluding you. You
was
kind
still
of
eluding me,
out,
and we might get more to this in part 2. But those lessons, like now, I look back and know how I won in Belgium, and I know how I lost in England. But at the time, like I was only taught to look at the tangible thing. Like you flipped it, dude. It was like nothing to do with emotion and the untangible thing, and the emotions that go into what caused.
Well, and as soon as I heard you talking about Belgium, I knew where the story was going, because you're like, I don't really I don't give a shit. It's like same as when you go racing when you got the flu and you just go, I'm not for it for today.
Yeah,
so
you're
you
like,
keep
I
your
want to be
heart
in
rate
bed.
down and your expectations down, and then all of a sudden you're in flow state. You're executing just off of instinct.
Yep.
And it's the best race you've had in however long. And yeah, I guess the lessons from that, you're still not fully learning them, because then you're in England, you win Moto 1 and you're back up top. And
if we go back to what it would be like to have a mentor like Stefan Everts or like Glenn Bell, or a father that had done pretty good, this is what they would know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a few of these things, they would know that.
You're like, hey, bud,
and they can harness it and be like, hey, I can see where you're at, like emotionally.
Yeah.
And this is what actually happened.
Yeah.
It's not that you hit that rut and flipped it. It's nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it's all up here.
It's all up here.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you might have seen it in one of my recent posts. I think I posted about like the Lawrences and how well they've done.
You did, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
Like I had access to Stefan Everts, Harry Everts. Like I just didn't know that I needed their expertise at the time.
Well, here's the thing though, right? And I've seen this play out so many times as well. And I say this, I think it's safe to say some of the personality traits that make you, number one, even able to function in the intensity and the adrenaline and the processing speed of racing motocross and supercross, right? Like I don't care the level, but if you're remotely good at it, it takes a unique personality trait, right? Same as like UFC guys. Like you're going to go get in an octagon, or you're going to go jump a triple or do a gate drop.
Can I just touch on that? Because, you know, some people are just born with different traits, or it's instilled. And I started right at the start of the podcast, I was like, I've been learning a fair bit about my traits that I have. And I kid you not, last week, made friends with a neighbor. He's a Canadian guy. He was talking about business and how like his journey into, you know, doing well in business was like, it's pretty hard having employees, but he's like, oh man, my narcissistic side was like so critical for this reason and for that reason. I was like, dude, we're like brothers in arms. So if I look back at like where I got that trait from, I grew up in a sawmill. That was our family business, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, listen or you get killed in this area. So
literally,
like my mum and dad were just really critical. Like that was their business. They had to be there a lot. We as kids had to be there a lot. And if we didn't listen, shit was like, it was a dangerous place.
Well, dangerous, old school, true blue, Aussie battler kind of family, right?
We
were.
There was like trucks and loaders and logs and stuff going everywhere, and saws and cars and trolleys, and like, man, it was a gnarly workplace. Like OH&S ever showed up, like my parents were screwed.
Yeah.
Like honestly,
Yeah.
so like that I know now, like as a parent and as a person, I'm like very critical. It's like my kids could do something that they didn't listen, and I just like got this switch. I'm like, I just flip out. I'm like, but it's not life or death with what we're doing, but that's how I am.
Yeah.
And that trait that we're kind of talking about, some of those traits that work, maybe not the best to work with people. And I've found that, I've definitely found that. Like, I know, like, probably working with me, like if you're a mechanic or a team owner or something, you're like, this dude is, and Jack Simpson said he's intense, but like I am, because it's just how I had to be to get through my childhood.
Yeah, it's how you had to, and that conditioning is what programs your nervous system for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And you get to our age, like I've spent the last, 5-6 years trying to undo all the stuff I went through growing up, and found, not the best upbringing at times and different things that happened. You were able to harness that, and I think that's what I was getting to, like to make you successful. But it's also not the most conducive personality traits to you being like a really functional human being on an emotional level.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's all relative to the level of, what's that saying where they say that your ability to succeed in life is proportionate to your ability to deal with stress or something along those lines. So you have a high tolerance for, like you said, living out of a backpack 7 years into your career, have no money, no friends, no family, with, most people would crumble doing that shit, But again, for you, your ego and your nervous system and your, at that point, identity to be like, hey, Stefan, I actually don't know what the fuck's going on right now. Can you help me? You're probably not going to do that, right?
I mean, if I knew, I would have.
I'm not saying you're conscious of this, by the way.
No, I was
I'm
not
saying
conscious
it's fully
of it.
Unconscious.
Yeah, it was totally unconscious. I was like, just, I've got to do, like, I was only doing what I knew and just doing a lot of it, whether it was right or wrong, because, that was my conditioning. I'm like, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm just going for it. Honestly, I wish I knew, because honestly, I've seen a lot of traits that I have in those champions as well. I was a little bit short on knowledge, probably.
I think you were short on opportunity and...
No, the opportunity was there. Like, you know what? I probably never even looked at it, because I was like, I've got 25,000 euro to survive, and I'm like, I don't even know how much it would cost to work with Harry.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can't afford it, so I'm not even going to ask.
It's not even entertained, right?
Yeah, but if I knew how important that was, I would have found a way. You know what I mean? Like, I actually didn't have any assets to sell, but you would find a way. If like, this guy has been around for 70-something years and he's seen like way more than anyone else, like Harry Everts. If I knew I needed that knowledge, you would somehow find a way.
You would, but also your journey is your own, and it wasn't the time for you to figure that out, No,
that's right.
So as much as I love the saying, it's almost empowering, where it's like what happened and couldn't happen any other way.
No, I do agree with that as well. Yeah. I know that all roads have led to exactly where I am, like in this moment. I've got 2 beautiful girls, a wife, I'm healthy, and if anything was different, it wouldn't quite be the same, and I couldn't imagine it being any different. So I definitely know, like, this is my journey, and for whatever reason I needed to learn it that way. I 100% believe that it was the right thing for me. Yeah.
It was your journey at that time.
Yeah. I just share this hoping that maybe I can inspire someone or give some knowledge or something to someone listening. You know what I mean?
It's absolutely inspiring. This is why I was kind of excited to kick this. Like I said, I did the Chad and the Justin Brayton episodes last year, but it was kind of caught up in the recap shows, and I was like, you retired unofficially, and we chatted last year about it, and then after Supercross I was just so burned out I didn't even want to look at a dirt bike until the new year. I was like, I'm just going to go be dad for a while. But yeah, I was like, your story, I knew there was so much more under the surface, and you're like a super deep person. Once I think I've had more access to you than most, to a degree, as far as like a media guy or someone in the industry. Mainly because of Kevin Williams, because I'm very close with Kevin, and you and Kevin were very close for the years you worked together.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I got to know you a little bit more than some. And I was like, man, Dean is going to have such a good story here that can help people, because I think fuck racing and motocross, like life, man. Like you're talking about losing a parent and going overseas, like not too similar to my story in the sense of, you know, I left the UK at what, 19?
Yep.
On my own, you know, living in America on my own. And then I came here and had my mom. But like I think kids nowadays have this linear, like, oh, if I don't have everything lined up, that doesn't mean you're going to become Dean Ferris, or you know, if you want to become Joe Stevens, whatever. Like, but you know what I mean? Like it's your story is just like resilience, and doesn't matter how many, you know, I mean, your level of making mistakes is winning a GP and then crashing because you got too excited or invested in the moment, but it's still a lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always said that my story is definitely not on the script. It was like I threw it in the bin, kind of rewrote the script, you know, that being that there is none.
Or as many times as you need to.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. And I've done it even in recent years, you know, with like winning as privateer, but that'll be part 2 by the sound of this.
Yeah, because that needs nearly a whole episode in itself that year, I think.
Yeah, I've got a lot of good things to say about that year and a lot of good lessons, and kind of like all of my years kind of come together into one, and that was 2023 as a privateer.
Yeah, literally 10 years after what we're talking about right now, right?
Exactly.
Right, so how long we got, Adam? 15, right, cool.
Oh, good.
So 13, I want to get to the Nations. That was a big turning point for you, I think. Did you win? Or
no, I didn't win.
Whole shot, right?
I whole shot. Well, actually,
because it was in Germany.
So let's go back to the start of the weekend. So at the Nations, there's only a ballet peg draw for the gate pick, and that's it.
Yeah.
But we all get a free practice of like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But we're all laying down.
Was it Tuschenthal?
Tuschenthal in Germany. Yeah.
Right,
so we're all laying down in our own class. So there's MX1, 450s, MX2, 250s, MX3. Everyone's on a 450 again.
It's open.
Open. So I was in MX2 on that bike, and we're just laying it down, trying to get the fastest time, because like that's what you do at a Grand Prix, and you're like, you know, you're not just gonna. So anyway, it was going down with me and Kenny for the fastest lap. He had it, and on the last lap, I strung a lap together. Like we were knocking each other off.
Yeah.
And I got the fastest lap.
So you pipped Kenny in Germany.
I pipped Kenny in Germany for the fastest lap.
No,
maybe it wasn't Kenny. It was Tomac. It was Eli Tomac.
No way.
He was on Geico Honda. Kenny was actually maybe in 4th or 5th. I don't think he was really feeling it.
So this is the stuff that's putting you on the map.
This is what put me on the map.
Yeah.
So I stringed that together. And then on the qualifying race, Medi was MX1. He won the qualifying race in MX1, like beat Dungey.
Yeah, right.
And then I whole shot and get second to Kenny. Like we rode away from the field. I was like maybe 2 seconds behind him at the finish line. So with a 1-2, we qualified.
You guys are fully in it.
We're first. We qualified first at like for the first time ever at the Motocross Nations. So we are stoked. Like you know,
who was your other teammate that year?
It was Todd. Todd was in the open class.
Right. So you, Todd, and Medi.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. The next day, free practice went good. I was like, I think I might have been fastest in that as well, or close to. That one lap I did was the fastest lap of the whole weekend, by the way. So I've got that to my name, which is cool, and it's just in front of Tomac.
On your day, you were the fastest rider in the world.
Well, for that lap, I was. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll take it like that.
Yeah. And then in first moto, whole shot, finished 4th. I actually got blown off the track with the wind, kind of messed that up a little bit, landed on the side of the jump, lost a few positions, but I like rode to 4th, like comfortably. Second moto was 5th on the MX2 bike. So I went 4-5 for second overall in MX2 class.
Yeah, right.
And led Australia to 4th overall. Like we were close for a podium. Todd went down on both his starts and had to ride back through the field. Yeah. So like we had to score at least one of those rides, you know what I mean? So
that's the thing with Nations, right? I always say it's basically you're as good as your worst result, which is how it plays out normally. Yeah.
So we were a solid 4th, and we were pretty happy. Like it'd been a long time since we'd done that good. Well, no, I lie. Sorry. Team Australia got 3rd in 2011 with Chad, Medi, and Mossy.
Yeah.
And this was 2013. So it was only 2 years later.
Yeah.
But overall, like, yeah, it was a good weekend of racing. Personally, was not a good weekend. Like, just had a lot of shit going on in the background. So, like, when I think back at some of my best days, everyone would be like, oh, it'd be Germany, wouldn't it? I'm like, no, it's not even close. Like,
Right.
yeah, there was like a bit of a shitstorm in the background. And I was like, the only piece I actually had was on the bike. I pulled my helmet on.
Do you think, though, that, and that sounds like a theme, honestly, when things are not going well for you, it allows you to relax on the bike as opposed to hyper focusing on that being.
I wouldn't say that necessarily.
Back then.
Yeah,
Back then.
maybe back then.
I'm just hearing this and unpacking
yeah,
it. You know?
no, well, it's one of those races where like it doesn't
mean shit either.
It doesn't
really.
mean shit. It's just a pride thing, and kind of again at the end of the year, kind of burn out. I hadn't really signed a contract. Team was kind of dicking me around. I was kind of like put all this effort in getting over there, and yeah, I think you're right. I was also like, oh man, not again. Like all this shit going on. Like I was in that same headspace where I was like,
whatever.
And yeah, you're like I did ride amazing. So. Well, there's
so
some
funny,
insight
like,
I've never really thought about. Like there was a theme.
I don't know. Like I've just heard you say it like 3 times now.
And they're my 2 best races of that year. And I was kind of in a
bit of a funk.
In a bit of a funk. Yeah.
It's just interesting. You know, normally because you see the highlights and that's still talked about now. The 250 whole shot and the 450s at Nations. And
yeah, it was the last carbide bike on the track in a whole shot. So that's pretty cool.
I know America. I hear people talk about that still to this day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, man. Podcasts and media, like you hear it. But obviously, I guess that's 13. And then 14, you end up racing Factory KTM in America.
Red Bull KTM in America.
Yeah. So how do you go from not giving a fuck where you finish at the Nations and being down and out almost, and then you're at A1? Like, how does that even
honestly,
happen?
it was a bit of a story to get there. It was, I got the attention from Roger DaCosta. They only had Mooscan.
They love a lap time in America. So I'm tipping they'd have seen your times and just gone, who is this guy?
Yeah, and I knew Stefan Everts, and he kind of dropped the word for me over there. DaCosta wasn't going to sign another MX2 rider if they weren't worth signing. They were just going to go do one coast with Mooscan and 450s, Kenny and Dungey. And Stefan's like, oh, can you ride Supercross? I'm like, well, I can. Yeah, I could ride it.
Oh, you did it in Australia?
Yeah, I did it in Australia a fair bit and was really good at it. So he's like, oh, I'll line something up. Got on the phone with DaCosta. He's like, come here and test. I was good enough in the test. Yeah. They were like, you're not amazing at Supercross, but we'll work on it.
You can ride it. Yeah.
We pretty much hired you because you're sick outdoors.
Yeah.
So, but to get there, I kind of snuck off from Europe. Dixon had I'd signed a letter of intent. I knew nothing about the law then with Dixon, but then he'd just kind of screw me the whole time, like lead me on saying like, it's not going to work out. Like it was kind of just, I don't know.
Whether it was games or just the reality.
Yeah, that's right. I can't quite remember the details. And then he's like, all right, you're going to sign. And I'm like, and then I was in America at the time, sneaking around, doing a test. He caught on to that. He's like, oh man, well, bro, if you don't sign with me, I'm going to have to take you to court because, you know, you've kind of left me with no one now, even though I felt like he was playing the other game. Like, you know, I've got everyone. So anyway, he's like, oh, you can pay yourself out of court if you want. I was like, oh man. I was just this young kid, like not knowing what to do.
Really? So that contract wasn't worth the paper it was written on anyway because it wasn't a contract.
Well, he reckoned it was, and I got some legal advice. They're like, no, it was pretty much written on a napkin. They're like, no, like, even if you shake hands on it, it's a binding contract. I was like, really? Like, he was making it sound like it was nothing. So anyway, I was like, okay, I feel like the relationship was ruined, and I'm like, he still hadn't paid me for my win or my podiums and was just dicking around with money because he knew the game better than me. Like, I needed my manager. I had a manager at the time, and I read the fine print. He had to send another letter saying you've only got 30 days to pay. So anyway, that's why Dixon didn't pay.
Because he knew what was coming.
So that become all like, here's what you can do. You can pay out of court, and I'll let you go. So anyway, I was like, oh, let's pay myself out of court. I had a chunk of money, you know, that was kind of locked up back here that I got access to. That was everything gone. I paid out of court, and I just backed myself. I got paid.
So wait, but then you paid out of court, but he kept the money he owed you as well?
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
So
welcome to GPs, ladies and
welcome
gentlemen.
to GPs. So yeah, all that work was it was not for nothing, but it was definitely not for money. Paid myself out of court, and then I was like, I'll back myself to win some in America because I was on a roll. I was getting better. I was like, if I win one of these outdoors, dude, I'm got 60 grand in my pocket. And KTM paid me as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and it was, you know.
Well, you're not going to take that opportunity. So
yeah, that's right. So I was like, all right, cool. I know that KTM's going to cover that. Like that, you know, it was not a huge amount of money, but it was enough.
Can I raise I never understand this with America. To this day with Prado, I don't get it. You're an outdoor guy learning supercross. The team invests in you, like you're going to go be the MX2 guy to really challenge for outdoors. Let's put him in Anaheim 1 and hope he doesn't get injured in the West Coast swing. Same with Prado. I don't get why I get the economy is based around
You're
supercross.
thinking like get him started with motocross?
Get him started with motocross.
Yeah.
Get one run on the board. You could have been a title contender that year. I don't know. I'm just outside looking in.
Yeah, well, I thought I would be. Honestly,
I
thought I would be a title contender.
Yeah.
But yeah, the economy is supercross over there, and you're going to learn it eventually. And I put my hand up to race it. Honestly, I probably should have done East Coast. I would have had more time to get ready. But yeah, I did West Coast, did the first 6 rounds, got a 7th at Phoenix, which was my best. But man,
You had mainly top 10s though, right?
I was top 10 the whole time. Like I was around 10th.
Yeah.
Not amazing, honestly. Had a few things. It was talking about like tough times in my life. That around then was like the hardest time in my life.
Yeah, right.
For sure. Like, and it's never to do with the riding. It's always the shit show that's happening behind the scenes. And, you know, like in your personal life, if shit's not going well, like nothing is going to flow well from there. So yeah, that time from like pretty much nations in 13 through 14 through 15 was like challenging as like, man, if you could pay me to go back and be 24 again or 23, I'll be like, no way, no way. So that was the start of my, you know, a personal shitstorm around there, and it showed in my riding. Like I was not doing well. I was way more capable than a 10th in an AMA Supercross, like in the lights.
But what are we talking about here though in personal life? Is it still the evolution of you're putting your whole life and soul into this? You got no money coming back.
No, it wasn't. It was never at this point. It wasn't money. It was just relationships.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Someone expects this of you, and it was just me becoming a man, being like, hey, like I know what I want and what I got to do. Like you need to step away and go kind of beat it, and then that person also coming in from a different angle and manipulating people or yourself, or like just trying to make things difficult, and especially when like if anyone's parents are involved, it's hard, you know what I mean, because we're very primal creatures still, even though we're so sophisticated with all this stuff. We're like very primal. Like we really need to get along with our parents, because you know 100, 200, 300 years ago or caveman days,
survival.
We needed them to survive, and we needed their advice on how to not get eaten by a lion. You know what I mean? So at this time, like there was a lot of friction between me and my mother, and my whole circle. And that was more me knowing what I needed, because at this point I'm 24, I'm like a pretty worldly. I'm like, what you guys are giving me or what you think I need is not what I need right now. And it just caused a lot of friction. I don't want to go into too much more depth with that.
I'm not asking you to dig deep, but I'm just curious when you said, you know, I'm like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
You know?
And like my mum always, like she loved me and we love each other, and she always wanted what was best for me, but just was sometimes, I would say, was, I don't know, not.
I think it's what we talked about earlier, wanting the best for you to the level of awareness or knowledge that they have at that time, right?
Yeah. That's right. So it was just a hard transition into me doing what, you know, Dean doing what Dean wants to do, because Dean probably has worked out what works best.
Yeah.
And kind of wouldn't cut the cord, so to speak. I wouldn't say like I'm not a mummy's boy, and I wasn't cutting the cord with her. It was more like other influences in our circle.
Yeah. Okay. So you race because you got injured in Supercross, right?
No, I didn't. I actually survived Supercross.
Oh, you did? I thought you broke your wrist.
I was really ill the whole time. I was really ill.
That's right. You had health issues.
Had health issues, but I come back. So after round 6, they went east. I flew back to Australia to sort out my visa because I hadn't sorted it out. It was all that last minute, this KTM thing.
Yeah.
had time. I come back here. We went to the embassy, did the thing. KDM in Australia gave me a 350 to practice on, and but I was so excited to be home. I hadn't been home for like 2 years. I was like out practicing with the boys, and I was just going too hard on a stock bike. Just went over the bars, broke my wrist.
Right. So that's when you broke.
That's the tangible thing. Me going too fast, but. Yeah. Me breaking my wrist like that was more to do with my personal life. Looking back, I'm quite a holistic kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I've got so much evidence to prove all of my injuries that have ever happened around this kind of stuff. So at the time, broke my wrist bad. Was very lucky. I had a good relationship with Steve Andrews.
Yeah.
It was Sunday afternoon. I called Sally, his wife. They were in Darwin. They were at the park playing with their kids. She picks up the phone like Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
It's like, what have you done? And I'm like, my wrist is ruined.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, okay. Can you just get an x-ray, send it through? I'll get Steve to look at it. I didn't get the right x-ray, like needed a lateral view or something.
Yeah.
Steve goes, oh, there's enough detail in there to show me that you've dislocated your lunate, which is one of your bones in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like the worst one to do.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, you would have been better off breaking your scaphoid, honestly. He tells me just over the phone, he goes, man, this is worst case. He's like, your hand's going to go numb in 6 hours from now because when you dislocate your lunate, it pushes on your median nerve.
Yeah.
And he goes, you need to get to like Brisbane Private ASAP. And he's like, I will organise everything. No problem. Just get there.
Right.
So I like boosted it from Kyogle.
With a smash wrist.
With a smash wrist. Had my girlfriend at the time changing gears in my brother's ute. It was my left wrist and we're just pinned. But I get to Brisbane Private. He's organised, him and Sally have organised everything. There's people waiting for me at the front door on a Sunday afternoon. I did MRI scans, booked me into the ward, and 6 hours on the dot, my hand starts going numb. The nurses are working with me all night to try to keep blood flow, try to keep it open because what happened is like my hand just kind of crippled.
Yeah.
Like that because my nerve was like degenerating.
Dying, basically. Yeah.
By the morning, I'd been up all night. We were like just massaging it. My hand was crippled by morning, but I was first on the blocks with his colleague because he wasn't there for surgery. His colleague pretty much got in and be like, Steve's just changed my schedule. Steve was like, you got to do this.
Yeah, this is this guy's career.
Yeah. Anyway, just before I went into surgery, the surgeon at the time, he was like, man, your hand will never be the same. Like he was just a very like black and white guy.
As they can be.
As they can be. Not like Steve.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, man, but I woke up, full feeling in my hand. Surgery went well. So like that connection with Steve Andrews had just saved my career.
Yeah.
Because if I'd have just gone off the x-ray that happened at the local hospital, they would have been like, you're fine, just go home.
I don't think people understand, right, like how dangerous the public system is. And it's not a slight on the medical care is actually pretty good in Australia, but the difference between, sports medicine and sports doctors and surgery versus the public system, like is literally can make or break your career.
Oh, absolutely.
In the space of, like you said, you've got an elite level surgeon that you're calling his wife on a Sunday and you probably wouldn't have ridden again or you would have, and it would have been the same story as everybody else. Your wrist's fused, you can't move it, it goes numb.
Yep.
Same old story, right?
Yeah, I think anyone that does a gnarly sport in Australia should have private health and build relationships.
It's the first thing I did when I was coaching legit. My program was, we were at a time one of the leading programs in junior and to a degree some of the pros we had. But I had, who was my doctor now? Obviously we had John Park on the physio side and, I feel really bad now. I've forgotten his name. One of the race safe doctors and surgeons. Anyway, I feel really bad. I've forgotten his name. I'm going to do a redaction on the second pod.
Okay.
I remember his name, but parents at the races. Oh, what have you done? Oh, tip, fib. Oh, this, that. No, cool. Greg Harris.
Okay.
Yeah, cool, Greg. Here's the x-ray sent through to he had his consulting suites in Port Melbourne by the Olympic Village, and he had all the surgeons in Melbourne. And you need plates, you need this, you need that, you need a rod, and they'd be so close at the local hospital to getting
to just plaster it up.
They'd call me and I'd be like, don't do it. I'd be like, you need to get in a car and go to the Royal Melbourne or I've got it, or just give me your x-rays. And I would do that liaising because it's, literally the matter of it working out for them, or they're like I had an injury that probably could have been fixed that I had to live with for the rest of my life, you know?
Yeah, we probably should do a bit more about like education around this. Like honestly, the amount of careers that would have finished early just from, and it's like you said, that the public system, like they're just not specialists. You know what I mean? But
Their
like
job is trauma and recovery. Like they just want to get you stable. They don't care if you can ride a dirt bike again. They just want you to lose your wrist, right?
Yeah,
like,
and there's been a lot of athletes that I've worked with, training buddies, where I'm just like, they're going to go somewhere, and I'm like, you better take a detour. I'll organize it. Like I'll call like Sally. I've called Sally so many times. Be like, does someone come and see you? Or this person's really close with me. They got a lower limb or a knee. Can you please get him in? Like, and she's like, no problem, every time.
Yeah.
So having that relationship's been like unreal for me and a lot of athletes. But as well, just I think, you know, if you're going to do something with your body to the best of your ability, you need to get the best help to get it fixed. And you do need to go see a specialist to get that done.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. All right. Let's leave it there.
All right.
Because, yeah.
I feel like we should leave on a positive note.
All right, so where, yeah. There'll be a part 2. We'll do this in a couple of weeks. We'll line it up. Because, yeah, like I said, I wanted to give all this. So, but so you break your wrist. Is that the year done?
Well, no, it wasn't actually. It did take a long time to heal from that.
Yeah.
But I flew back to America and I was getting ready for the outdoors when Roger said, hey, like we can go racing this weekend. Like I was preparing there for like, I don't know, round 6 of the outdoors. It was the injury is that long.
Right.
And then I had the opportunity to go back to Europe and fill in at Ice One Husqvarna.
That's why you ended up back in Europe.
Yeah,
right?
That's why I ended up back there. She's like, we can do either way. He was cool about it. He goes, but you know, like KTM Husqvarna, we're one big family. They need riders there. So if you're willing to do that, it might be a good chance to go get yourself back in the Grand Prix if that's what you want to do.
Right.
So it was my choice. Roger gave it to me, and that's how I ended up
over there.
Back in Europe.
We'll pick up episode 2 from that.
Yep.
When you go back to Europe.
Cool.
Because it's been 2 and a bit hours, and yeah, I don't want to shorten it just to not do your story justice. So, I mean, let's revisit this in a couple of weeks or a month, or we'll put a time frame together.
Yep.
I know you're busy and we're all busy. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to it so far. It's like the first long form where I'm taking the podcast. I've really enjoyed it. Dean, I hope you have too. It's really cool.
It's been great, eh?
Story.
Yep.
And we'll get more out of you in the next episode, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right.